Downtown, I got that heat, let's go.
Damn. Happy Tuesday, people. I'd like to welcome everybody to a very random midweek podcast here on the SMT YouTube channel. Very random. In fact, Moose called the shot. He wanted to do a pod tonight. So I thought, let me wrangle up some of the panel guys and see what's happening for tonight. Anyways, big salute to the patrons. Big salute to the YouTube members. Thank you for supporting us directly and making content on this platform possible. Yo, what up, Keemon? What up? How you doing, brother? Hope all is well in your world, man. Baby Yodeler's in the house. My dude, Tech Guy 32's in the house. Salute to you all. Yeah, very random edition of the show, but I guess it had to be done. So whenever Moose decides he's going to show up, we got things we got to discuss. What up, B? What up, BM?
What's going on?
Not a whole lot, man. BM, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great.
Cloud9, baby.
Yes, sir. It's only Tuesday, but we're doing great.
Yeah, man. Fantastic. And it's all upside, too, man.
Yes, sir. Hopefully, T-Mobile keeps me connected. I'm coming to you from T-Mobile right now.
All right, everybody. Let us pray. I don't know where you are, dude. You might be out in the boonies. I don't know.
I have no words.
Got to put it to the test, man. Got to put it to the test.
No. How long have you been using T-Mobile service? Yeah.
Up until like the last couple months, I had it since 2019. Like basically right after the merger closed. I've always had it as a secondary line.
Why'd you give it up?
Well, after Verizon and AT&T were able to build out C-band to a much better effect than T-Mobile's done N41, I felt more comfortable using those two as my primary and secondary.
You think
it's more reliable?
Do you think there's other people in that same camp that did the same thing?
I think so. I think the people who care enough to have a secondary carrier, I think the conversation should be had as of now, like, hey, how much am I paying for this T-Mobile service? Can I get a secondary line for a reasonable price through one of the other two carriers and see the same, if not better performance and better coverage? Because, there's definitely something to be said about the capacity difference for a while there, but now I think the playing field has been leveled, and I think the other two have kind of taken off, especially in the urban areas.
So I think the right way to play it is to use Mint Mobile as your secondary and pay like a fraction of the price you would for like T-Mobile postpaid, and then do whatever you like as your primary, whether it's Verizon or AT&T or whomever, or even using Mint as your primary and then having Visible or something else as secondary. Just when you talk about cost savings, right? Trying to manage expenses, Like, there's a way to do this through prepaid and MVNO where you can have all three legit for $100.
Oh yeah, easy.
Like you could pull it off, and you could get a good data experience, which seems crazy, but you just got to be savvy, right? You're going to be on Visible for Verizon. You're going to be on, Cricket or AT&T prepaid or Red Pocket or whatever, and then you're going to be on Mint. And I think you could keep that under $100. I think it puts you at around $90, $95.
Oh yeah, I mean, if I really wanted to cut expenses, I'd port to Visible, use Visible Plus as the primary, and then just have Mint as whatever their quote unquote unlimited plan is as a backup, or even AT&T prepaid does like their 12-month offers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's the value in prepaid right now is insane, and like if you really need to save money, you can do it without compromising too much of your experience.
Let's see, is this camera working? Maybe. See my grand piano in the back?
Oh yeah. It's a little small from the dashboard, but I can see it on my phone.
All right, that's the baby grand piano. Yeah, and that couch is where I make magic happen, bro.
I didn't even know that.
Yo, all right, guys.
Where's the man?
What is it?
Where's Moose?
Dude, I don't know, man. He's the one who called for this too. All right, so we gotta change a couple of things here. Let's figure this out here. All right, so we gotta change just a couple of settings. We gotta change this to B chicken. And then we gotta change to EM text chicken. There you go. And we are good. Everybody got more chicken now. Yeah.
Man, sneeze.
Sneed, I was just thinking, if you really wanted to get the best possible network solution for under $100, you get an iPhone 15, get Boost Infinite, then you got Dish and AT&T access. You do Mint and Visible. You have 4 MNOs for under $100 a month right now.
That's crazy. Because your Boost Infinite's 25, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then what else did you say? What other providers?
You do Visible Plus at $35 a month, I think is their promotional rate. So that's $60 right there, and then do Mint. Easy peasy.
You got it all. All right, what else here? First story as we wait for Moose, whenever he decides he wants to get here. Charter is selling its towers to Everest Tower Company. Do you know about this? Anybody know about this?
I didn't even know they had towers.
Dude, you're like the 10th person to say this to me. All right, so let's read about this and see what is happening. 546 cell towers. Charter will receive existing and future tower use rights if it needs them. If it needs them. So that would imply what? Putting up their own gear on it? Like CBRS hotspot type equipment? What is that? Access? Anyways. Charter will be selling 546 of the cell towers to Everest Infrastructure Partners and Tower Company. The two companies announced. It says here the wireless tower assets included in the transaction, located in 37 states throughout the U.S., collectively represents one of the largest portfolio transactions of tower assets in the U.S. during the past 10 years. A Charter official declined to provide any more details. However, it's relatively minor one for the cable giant. Charter did not file any documents related to the transaction with the SEC. Charter in 2000 inked a deal with KGI to sell space on its 1,200 cable towers around the country to companies in the wireless industry. Okay. First of all, didn't know they had towers. Second of all, what does this indicate? What does this tell us about the direction that Charter is going? It says here, Charter, a sale of its cell towers is interesting considering the cable company has been teasing a broader entry into the U.S. wireless industry. This is what I was talking about. Charter added 594,000 mobile lines in Q3, up from 396,000 year ago quarter. They now total over 7.2 million mobile lines. Makes them even bigger than, well, I guess next quarter they'll be bigger than Boost. Spectrum Mobile through MVNO gets access through Verizon. Charter Spectrum also bought Spectrum licenses in the CBRS auction. We figured that was going to be its way into wireless, kind of building a network or whatever. And this seems to make sense. If you have towers, you put CBRS gear on them, and you have yourself a wireless network that you can offload traffic. Apparently, they're not doing that. So, EMB, safe to say that cable going into wireless in the traditional sense, probably not happening the way that they first initially thought, or we were teased, right? We just assumed that they were going to do it. I'm kind of seeing it a little bit different now. So I think what we have to do now is kind of temper our expectations. I really don't think they're going to build much of a wireless network. I think what they're going to end up doing, possibly strand mounting, some areas where they have like high usage, but I don't think they're going to be building a macro grid at all. If they're selling their towers, they're liquidating assets, returning value. They're probably creating some liquidity here to free up cash and investing into their DOCSIS upgrades. Am I off base here, or do you guys think that's how it's going to play out? Give me kind of your thoughts on this. B, I'll start with you.
Well, I definitely think that you're making solid points, Sneed. I think that Charter is exactly where you said that they are. They need some money, so they sold off some assets to get some money. I don't think they ever had any intention of getting into the wireless space or into that particular segment of telecom fully. I don't think they ever had any intentions of doing that. They have an MVNO play specifically because that's a retention play for them. That's it. I don't think they ever had any intention hours for anything other than leverage. That's it. So they sold it off because they need the money, because their core business isn't growing right now. They're getting their hind parts handed to them by Verizon and T-Mobile. And now you have a third player getting into that space as far as fixed wireless access, because AT&T is jumping in now. So, I mean, they've got plenty of competition, and they're going to need the revenue, and they're not able to really sell themselves as a growth engine right now. So because of that, they got to find ways to be able to cut costs. Now they don't have to pay tax dollars on these assets anymore, and they can use that liquid cash to fund their core business. They need to upgrade in a major way, so they need DOCSIS to get out there as quickly as they can make it happen in order for them to be able to compete, because they've got more competition than they ever have. So I think that's what this was all about. Again, they never had any intentions of getting into the wireless space, in my opinion. They are doing exactly what they wanted to do, which is be an MVNO and compete with the likes of Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile with, Verizon's assets. So this is what it is.
The numbers kind of prove your point. They're adding mobile lines. They're giving away the services for dirt cheap. They don't really turn a profit in the traditional sense, right? And I think those DOCSIS upgrades are pricey. There's a lot of hardware that has to go into that. I think there's a lot of labor that goes into that, a lot of planning. And there's no growth in cable. I mean, we've seen a lot of their commentary, at least from cable as an industry. They've said new home builds have slowed down. They talk shit about fixed wireless, but in reality, fixed wireless is here to stay. And they say that it's a temporary parking lot for customers. I don't agree. You know, I think there's several quarters still left for major growth, which means there's no growth at cable. Like if they didn't have an MVNO agreement with Verizon, like cable would be losing 50 to 100,000 a quarter. You know, the 200,000 a quarter. Like I'm not even exaggerating. Because if I look at the fixed wireless ads, we're talking about Verizon adding 400,000 collectively, and then T-Mobile adding 600,000. That's 1 million subscribers. Many of them are new customers to the entire industry, but they're also coming over from cable providers and DSL providers and so on. So this is something. But I will tell you that I think this indicates that big cable got a pretty nice deal from Verizon that they can live with. Right? Because if the deal wasn't good, they would probably be running to try to figure out a way, you know, to reduce their costs and their overhead. So I think they're comfortable with that. But I also think this is also we heard cable say something like, we want to reduce our reliance on Verizon's gigs by like 1/3. I don't know if they ever really get there. You know, maybe with the hotspots, they might be able to pull it off, maybe, but they're going to have to be very calculated about where they put those hotspots. And I know it's easy for them. It's not expensive. And, you know, it's on existing infrastructure. Maybe they could pull that off, but they're not going to be doing it building macros. Clearly, they're getting rid of macros. EM, let me get you in here on this, man. Your thoughts?
I think a couple things. I think Charter and Comcast have realized that it's a lot harder to build out supplemental coverage with CBRS than they originally thought. And they're finding it easier to just do the whole Wi-Fi hotspot thing. You know, they can just build it into the customer's existing equipment and give it to them for free. And then boom, you got free capacity for your wireless customers, right? I don't know. Since it's such a small amount of sites too, like this could have been just like a project initiative within the company to like see if they could make money off of leasing tower assets that they built. And then it just ended up not being a fruitful project. You know, there's a couple of reasons, but I think at the end of the day, it's just about them looking for cash, because the interest from existing cable and DSL customers in fixed wireless is really starting to hit their growth numbers. So that's what I got. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into this.
Shout out to S Blue Tech. Appreciate you for coming through, man, and hanging out with us tonight. Dennis chimes in. I think they originally had thoughts, but costs changed the equation with all the inflation. Probably a factor. You know, they were probably gung-ho about it and really thought they could pull it off at a cost they could live with. And then cost to build got expensive, and I guarantee you they also underestimated the complications of it. What do you think, B? You think it was they were a little bit gung-ho and a little bit too eager beaver?
Yeah, there are a lot of people in a lot of places that underestimate and undervalue the work that the telco space does, particularly the wireless companies, and that's unfortunate. But they, they're gonna learn today. So
it's cold outside, B. It's cold outside.
It's cold outside, man. I say it all the time. It's cold outside. I mean, hey, it's very expensive. It's very Capex sensitive, and this stuff breaks. It's outside all the time. I'm sure the telco, big cable, they understand that they've got outside infrastructure as well, but they're not nearly as exposed outside as a wireless company is. So when you factor that in with the fact that you got to pay billions of dollars every time you want to acquire more spectrum, and all they got is CBRS, that's really not a spectrum that can really handle anything but data. It's not really anything that you can use for voice or anything like that, not reliably. So, I mean, it's just, to me, it was a half-hearted attempt. They fooled a lot of people into thinking they were serious. Me personally, I was never really convinced that they really wanted to do anything in the wireless space other than become an MVNO. And to their credit, they've experienced some success in that, but it's not really revenue accretive to a point where it really moves the needle forward for them. It is purely a retention play for them, and maybe it's working, but according to what we're seeing by the growth in fixed wireless access ads, whether it be Verizon or T-Mobile, fiber to the prem, AT&T is growing very well. Verizon Wireless is growing fairly well. The other, their competitors are eating pretty well right now. They're eating pretty good.
Yes.
So judging by that, I'm not sure how much of a retention play this is or how well it's working. But just based on their financials over this year, I mean, they're definitely strained. They're not growing, and as far as their revenue is concerned, it's essentially being flat, across, big cable. So, I mean, congratulations on having 7 million customers that you're not really making any money off of. The only people who are happy are the consumers, and you guys know how I feel about that. If it's not a situation where it's balanced and there's businesses that are profiting and consumers are happy with their product, then it's not a sustainable business model, and it needs to change. So what does that mean? I predict price increases. I've said that before. I don't think that they can do anything other than raise prices in order to be able to make some money off of the customers that they're currently, accruing. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, the writing's on the wall. We've seen this happen. We've seen this play out more than once. Ask T-Mobile, who gave away the whole world for like a decade, and now they're taking it all back. So,
Dennis, jump in.
So like as I was touching on the comments, yeah, I think cable had true intentions to build out. I don't think they wanted to be national, but I think they wanted to build out like a very healthy regional network in the territories that they were in. I think there was complexities around actually building out that network from a like skilled labor force, because it required, wireless is its own kind of different beast. We're talking about engineering, right? And there was different cost factors that changed that. As far as the comments that B made about the actual wireless piece goes, I still think wireless is going to be a pretty pivotal product for cable. Like, I don't see that going away or see them de-emphasizing it, because I mean, I can't speak for Charter, but I know for Comcast for a fact that Xfinity Mobile is profitable for them on especially on their premium unlimited lines. So the ones that are above like the basic one, like has like the 720p video and stuff like that, they're making healthy margins on those more premium unlimited plans, and they're also making good margin on their data bucket plans that they're still selling, the 1, the 3, and the 10 gig bucket plans. They're making good margin on those as well. Do I see price increases happening in the future? Absolutely, because everyone's raising prices. Verizon just increased Fios prices by $10 over here on the Gig 2.0 plans.
What was the previous cost, Dennis?
I was paying $70 with my.
So you go to 80?
Yeah, to 80 because I have the loyalty discount. But if there was no discounts, it'd be 110.
90?
It'd be 110. Yeah, without discounts. But with my auto pay and paperless billing discount and the loyalty discount that I have, it's 80.
Wow.
Yeah. So I see price increases happening across the board, but the only reason why I see that happening is because I think there's more choice to enter the market, but competition isn't really healthy right now, right? Like, no one's in the traditional broadband space, no one's really driving down the cost. Like the value proposition across the board, if you actually combine your wireless and your home internet solutions, whether it be with T-Mobile Home Internet and T-Mobile Postpaid or Comcast and Xfinity Mobile, all of them work out to being about the same cost. If you're looking at it as like a holistic bill right now, no one's trying to be super aggressive in the cost price point standpoint. Everyone's focused right now on revenue and ARPU, it seems like, at this moment in time, and reducing their operational expenses to generate additional cash flow.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I think when I look at the space with respect to industry costs, like for consumers, I think we're in a good place. I think what was missing before was competitors. And now with fixed wireless access, you get some new names putting their offer on the table to consumers. And they're coming in with lower prices than what the incumbents have offered. So to me, I think in and of itself, that's a win. That's going to drive costs down. I don't know, 5-10% maybe, Dennis? It's worth mentioning. You know what I mean? If somebody ends up paying, maybe they leave cable and go to fixed wireless, and then they get a bundle discount, it might drive down pricing for them by $20 a month. So then it's even closer to 30%.
But we really haven't so I agree there's more competition around that entry level product. So like sub 300 megabits per second space, which is
Mm-hmm.
typically have been cables
Entry level cable versus fixed wireless, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when T-Mobile fixed wireless came out, we saw speed increases go up for the entry level product, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the actual cost, right? The overall cost, this hasn't really changed. Like cable's still doing promo pricing. The entry level product across the board still hovers somewhere around that $50 to $25 range, depending on if
Mm-hmm.
you're bundling. And it's been that way for a long time with promos. So like the entry level didn't really change. The only thing that happened is that now when Comcast raised your rates, now you can switch to T-Mobile Home Internet for 90 days or whatever to be a new customer. That's all that really changed. But the actual pricing hasn't really changed. And in the case of cable, the only thing that really changed from them is they got a bit more aggressive on the mid splits and the DOCSIS 4 upgrades, which I guess you're getting more quality of a product for your price point, but prices overall across the board are still going up, right? Like, especially when we talk about non-promotional rates, like Comcast and Charter both raised price. I know Cox raised prices, Fios raised prices. Like everyone's raising their prices overall. If we look at the non-promotional rates after the promos are gone.
So the pricing piece, right? And I think that's worth mentioning. The pricing for the consumer, as long as it's a fair price, I don't think the customer cares all that much. They usually only churn when two things happen. The pricing balloons, right? So they start looking for a better rate, or the performance degrades, right? Or else customers typically like to stay, Dennis. They don't really like to shop and switch. It's painful, right? So with respect to pricing, it's only a problem if it's bad, right? So like when cable explodes or balloons the price. Fixed wireless has kind of massaged that, right? They're coming in, they're saying, hey, here's a price lock for you, which is basically a promotional rate in a way, right? It's just a little extended, right? By saying 3 years or 5 years. So in my opinion, I think it's kind of a mask, but it's still longer duration than cable. And then at that point, they're probably like, well, maybe I can leverage getting a better deal from cable because I've been at fixed wireless for a couple years.
I agree with that. I agree with that sentiment, but there is one thing that you touched on that I actually disagree with you. You talked about it being painful to switch. I think that with the fixed wireless product being on the market, it is easier than ever for consumers to switch, because in the case of Comcast, right, once you have your coax RAN, you never need to have a tech out ever again, right? Like,
yeah, but I'm talking about the wireless piece too. Remember, some of that's bundled in here.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like the wireless piece, you don't need anyone out. You just pick up the gateway from your local Verizon store and you just plug it in and you're off to the races, right? It's dead simple. You're up in 60 seconds. And in the case of Comcast, right, now that I have a coax line hooked up to my house, I could legitimately be up and running within 2 minutes with Comcast. So I think it's actually easier than ever to switch. I think that's gotten easier. I think it's less painful.
Yeah, but customers don't like to do it, is my point. It's painful as in like there's steps and people don't want to. It's not ideal. They don't want to.
Fair.
Come on, Dennis. They don't want to shop. like you're lucky to get a customer to even look at two options. Like you got customers that beg for options. They say they want competition, but dude, they don't even know how to shop for things that they want, right?
That's
so like
fair.
They'll sit there and complain about their cable operator, but they won't explore fixed wireless.
That's fair, but the number one reason that people switched to fixed wireless was for price, based off of the Roger Entner surveys that he did, right?
100%. Yeah. But they're doing it out of necessity. It really feels that way. It's like, we're bargain hunting. We're looking for a better rate. I mean, who's going to make an argument, Dennis, that switching to fixed wireless gets you a better experience? That's got to be less than 10% of the customers.
Fair. Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So like that's kind of how I'm looking. I'm just playing it from that sensible angle of like a 55-year-old, 60-year-old someone who's like just wants shit to work. And they just want the price to be, bro, if they pay the same price for the rest of their life, they're ecstatic. Even if it bumps up like a small percentage, they'll take it on the chin. Customers have been resilient. Nobody leaves over $5. They leave over 40, 50% price increases. Like if their bill goes from 80 to 110, they'll leave over that. If it goes from 80 to 130, they'll leave over that.
Yeah, you got to boil the frog. as the saying goes, if you know that saying.
I've heard that before. Oh, man, we got some more people here in the chat. Tech Guy 32 chimes in. If they keep raising prices, they risk government intervention on the form or rate regulation.
Nah, the government doesn't care. They can argue that there's more competition now, that if someone wants to switch, they got... I mean, dude, they didn't care back when it was just satellite as the other option. They won't care now that there's fixed wireless in the market.
Here's another thing RF Waves mentions. Yeah, man, all new gateway router Wi-Fi passwords. Like they hate that stuff, man. That actually is probably the most painful thing for them.
You know, people. I just want to give a prosumer tip for you guys. You know, if you name your Wi-Fi name the same, like if you make the SSID the same and you make the password the same, you won't have to redo everything on your device. It'll just auto connect. Just
so that needs to be in a card that gets delivered with all the gear.
I'm actually, can I just say, I'm legitimately surprised that there's not some type of help article or something that comes in the packaging with getting started from like Comcast that doesn't just say that to make it one step easier.
Yeah.
I can tell you that is used as a sales pitch for FWA, that exact thing, to make it even easier for customers to switch from cable.
Oh, damn. Keymon says AT&T is giving $300 gift cards for people to try out fiber. That's nuts. Dude, do you know what deal I got when I signed up for fiber?
Wait, you want to hear what's nuts? No, this is an active deal happening right now. Fios is giving away an Xbox Series X and a $300 Visa prepaid card to get people to switch to Fios gigabit internet in my area, but it only applies to new customers. But you're getting a Series X Xbox and the $300 Visa card, and then they're doing like a 5-year price lock. But you know what that tells me? It tells me that Fios is having a hard time, at least in my area, getting people to switch.
Yeah, they want to grow, or whatever. Maybe they're losing customers.
Well, I told you they've been raising rates.
Oh, so maybe you're thinking it's connected to that?
Well, Fios, to be clear, Fios was never a big player. I think they only had like 30 to 40% in any market, like any part of Pittsburgh. So they were never the dominant one. It was always Comcast. And if it's 30, then the other 10% were on satellite, ironically enough. I'm sure that's probably switched around to T-Mobile Home Internet being around, because there's a lot of T-Mobile Home Internets that I'm seeing more and more of. But anyhow.
MS is in the house. Oh, damn, Max Tech Studios. Get that AT&T fiber if you can. Not only is it the cream of the crop, you now get $300 chemo mention, more chicken. That's right, get more chicken. And we all know how much B hates more chicken, so get yourself more chicken. All right, guys, next article. 5G is growing fast, but don't forget the indoor coverage. Oh, man, I like this sentiment. And Morris. All right, so 5G take-up is continuing to rise around the world, despite continued economic challenges and geopolitical unrest in some markets. Growth still being driven by 4 key regions: China, India, and then I'm guessing it's the U.S. and Japan. 4 key regions.
Probably Korea.
Korea. Okay. Let's see here. 1 in 5 of all global mobile subscriptions expected to be 5G by the end of 2023. Total number of 5G subs forecasted to increase by 63%, or 610 million this year. That'll bring the total 5G connections to 1.6 billion. 100 million more than previously predicted. So 5G adoption actually moving at a faster pace than initial predictions. In the 6 years between the end of 23 and the new upper timeline of 29, global 5G subs are forecasted to increase by more than 330%, from 1.6 billion to 5.3 billion. 5G coverage is forecasted to be available to more than 45% of the global population by the end of 23, 85% by the end of 29. North America and the Gulf Cooperation Council expected to have the highest regional 5G penetration rates by the end of 2029 at 92%. What do you guys think of those numbers? Do you guys think those are on point, or do you think they're kind of bullish?
I think they're on point.
The one thing I would say It says here, North America and the Gulf Cooperation Council are expected to have the highest regional 5G penetration rates by end of 29 at 92%. That's a high number, man.
What was our
92%.
penetration on LTE? What was the penetration for that?
Well, it depends on the year. So what was the launch year? Like 11?
Yeah, that sounds about right. But let's call it towards the tail end because they're predicting 29. So you're talking the tail end of the.
I mean, I don't know if we ever even got to 92%, Dennis.
Really?
Yeah.
I honestly can't. I can't tell you the last time. Well, that's a lie. T-Mobile, I've connected the edge even just within the last couple of weeks, but I can't tell you the last time on AT&T or Verizon I've seen not LTE.
I'm thinking like the last 10% is always like a legacy device holdout. You know, there's still people on those older, like that's how I was looking at it, is like, how do you get past 92% when you got people that refuse to upgrade devices?
That's not what I was looking. The way I read that, or the way I was understanding that, was like 92% of coverage on air will be 5G, not 92% of consumers will have 5G capable devices. That's how I was reading that.
I feel like I missed a huge portion of the discussion. I'm sorry about that, guys. I'm still working.
It's all good, man. Let me see if there's anything else interesting in the report. 80% of the growth is generated by 4 regions: China, India, North America, Western Europe. China accounts for a third of the growth in 2023, which 5G now covers 95% of the pops in China, in combination with the proliferation of more and more 5G smartphone models. All right, now for the indoor challenge. Enhanced mobile broadband, fixed wireless access, gaming, AR, VR-based services are the most common early consumer use cases for 5G. We spend over 80% of our time indoors, and it's really important to have good connectivity. 5G is a really good thing for that. Okay, so indoor coverage. Most traffic generated indoors. Most of the mid-band deployments has been to support the coverage and capacity outdoors, supporting the mobile broadband services and fixed wireless access. Davis pointed to a recent Ericsson Consumer Lab study that highlighted the correlation between network performance in key venues and service provider churn. Whoa. I've been saying this, dog. On this podcast 3 weeks ago, I said this was going to be a problem. This article was just written November 30th, so 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago on this very podcast, I said people are out and about and they're going to these big venues and mid-band won't cut it. You are going to see some folks are going to choose their carrier based on whether or not it works where they go, right? So they're going to go to a venue, a Taylor Swift concert, an NFL game, because people are out experiencing things now. It's not the pandemic anymore. It's this post-pandemic world. Millimeter wave was going to have to be a thing. DAS system installations and upgrades were going to have to be a thing. I've been saying this, and I knew this day was coming because the shit was going to matter. You cannot build a network that doesn't work indoors or crashes at big venues because it doesn't have enough capacity. Fiber circuit access, DAS systems, and millimeter wave and CRAN are a must. It is not optional.
Hey, Sneed, I just have a question. Which carrier invested in millimeter wave first?
T-Mobile.
Okay, I'll give you another guess. There's only 3. So I'll give you another guess.
I know it's Verizon, but I will say to harpen after Sneed's point, venues, at least for me, venues aren't the most important, but I'll tell you which ones are the most important, and it's really where I judge a carrier. Airports, man. Airports is the time and the place where I need the mobile carrier to perform, because you're stuck and you got things to do. Like literally when I'm in an airport, when I'm flying, it's for work. So I need to be able to hotspot and have a usable connection. So that's the true test for me when it comes to airports. And generally speaking, at least in my experience with the airports that I've visited, I've found AT&T to be very good. They've had, very modernized stuff. And then as time has been going on at certain airports, I've been seeing Verizon be performing very good as they get the opportunity to upgrade their DAS systems and such. So yes, small cells and DAS systems and millimeter wave are going to be very important in very high density areas. Because as was touched on, one macro with one sector cannot, with a little bit of midband, cannot handle that level of density.
Let me comment to that real quick, Dennis. By 2030, I can see a scenario where if you are going to have enough capacity at an airport, you are going to require 5 channels of mid-band frequencies of at least 60 megahertz each. If you don't have millimeter wave, you need at least 5 channel aggregation, 60 megahertz of bandwidth per channel, at least. And no carrier has that, and no carrier will have 5 channels of 60 plus megahertz on mid-band by then. Millimeter wave is going to be the only way. A DAS will be the only way. And the DAS should have millimeter wave on it as a solution. And it's going to take a 10 gig fiber circuit or more.
You know, Sneed,
or more.
That leads me back to what you were saying before. We were talking about this on our last podcast here. I think Elliott Management is who the financial company is.
Yeah.
They're singing a completely different game, and this is why I believe Crown Castle, they're not about to die or anything. If you're a small cell provider right now, this is your time to shine. Now, I know, you know, to the point of that article, there may have been some over projection from Crown Castle as far as, you know, how long the build process was going to take. But I don't think that that means that they should shut down their doors. Small cells are going to be the wave. That's the new cell tower. Like, that's the new macro. For where things are going, you're going to have to, it's going to require the RF to get closer to the customer. That's why, you know, Verizon, all these other companies are building these intelligent edge networks. They're getting closer to the customer. They're doing all these things to get closer to the customer because that's where they want the computing to take place. They want the latency to go down. It just doesn't. A lot of times these financial guys, you know, they're money people, and that's great, but they don't really know where the industry is going. So they make these blanket statements based solely on the financials, and they sound very out of touch and very out of, you know, out of sync with where things are going. So, I mean, to your point, that's why I said what I said about Crown Castle. I think that company overall will be fine long term. And as far as the industry is concerned, you're right, Sneed. I mean, you have to get closer to the customer to deliver the type of speeds that the consumer is going to want going forward, because people are willing to pay for experiences. They're going to go to football games. They're going to go to basketball games. They're going to go to baseball games. They're going to go, you know, inside of arenas and go to, you know, different events and things of that nature. And that's going to have thousands of people, tens of thousands of people all huddled together. You know, Moose is not here. I'm not sure why. It's almost 7:30. But, you know, Moose talks all the time about, you know, the soccer events and everything that are coming to America in the next few years. And that's going to be 100,000 people plus, perhaps, in one place. And you can't service that amount of people with anything but millimeter wave. Not
You
the
know
way
what,
that
D? Can I comment to that?
Sure.
If I'm at one of those events, I don't want to be on a macro that's a mile away. I want no parts of that macro that's a mile away. That connection that to that cell is going to be poor. It's going to be a degraded signal. It's going to be noisy, right? Sinar through the roof, you know, and it's not going to be a good experience, and it's going to be congested.
Yep.
What are we talking about here? You got carriers talking about decreasing their spend. For how long? What are you going to relax spending for a year or two, and then you're going to have to reaccelerate your build?
Well, it depends. I mean, you know, there are companies, for example, like Verizon, that are talking about lowering their Capex, but I think it's because they can. They can do it because they've always shown the propensity to kind of overbuild. They can slow down and relax on some things, but when you're a company like T-Mobile, despite what they've tried to advertise and market to the, you know, to the consumer and to the general public at large, they are very, very far behind in these types of product offerings. DAS systems, small cells, in-building solutions. This is not what they do. They've never really shown the ability to even want to try. And maybe it's because of finances. They haven't been able to afford it. I don't know. I'll allow them to, I guess, speak for themselves and give us a reason why. But the truth is that they haven't. So in my opinion, you know, now isn't the time to reduce Capex. If it was anything, instead of giving share buybacks to the investor, I would have taken that money, told the investor to be be a little more patient for a few more years. I'm going to take this revenue, and I'm going to put this back into Capex, and I'm going to try to spend with AT&T and with Verizon, so that I have the ability to offer even more of a similar network experience to those guys, so that I can then offer, or I can then in turn ask for the consumer to pay me more because I have a better product now. But I think they wanted to appease the investor, and oftentimes the right thing to do isn't always the most popular thing to do, and that may have, made their stock prices go down a little bit, which they obviously didn't want to happen. So they appeased their investor, because we all know a lot of times it's build out the consumer. Yeah, they want these things and they need these things and all that kind of stuff, but the financial return on investment has been it's been underwhelming for the entire industry at large. So you weigh those things out, but from a network standpoint, this is needed. Sneed is right. I agree. I think Elliott Management, I think that's the name of their company. They're definitely wrong and kind of tone deaf as far as where things are going. You have to continue to build, and long term, I think Capex is only going to stay at least at the rate that it is right now going into 2024, maybe even increase up a little bit, further into the 20 billion plus range, just in order to keep up with the rate of demand. Because consumers talk a good game about wanting to save until it's time to actually start using the services. Data goes up like 20 to 40% every year. So customers are using their phones, and they're using them more, despite what they may say or feel. They're using them more, myself included. And so that's going to require a very robust build just to maintain where we are right now. But we know this is not a maintain type of country. This is a what can we do? Where can we go from here? So
what I want to quickly say before we switch gears is to hearken to one of B's points. If we look at the history of the telco space, anytime a telco company reduces their Capex, they end up falling behind. And then when they do need to catch up, they end up spending at least 2x to 3x the cost in order to actually catch up and modernize their network or get whatever they need to get done. Telco is a constant maintenance game, and there's certain areas where you can reduce spend, but you shouldn't ever really be reducing spend on your network. Upgrades and maintaining of the network, these are just consistent parts of being in this type of business, and that isn't going to change. And right now, the decisions that are being made right now are going to impact things like the 6G build out cost when they're trying to do their network planning around, okay, what do we have to do? It's going to dictate how much they're going to have to spend in order to get ready for 6G, right? All the small cells that are being put in place right now today will be easier and more affordable upgrades in the future when required for things like 6G versus waiting until that time comes.
So actually, we can prove that you're right, Dennis. To prove your point, look at AT&T. They literally had to have FirstNet. If they didn't have FirstNet, their wireless network is a shell of what it is today. And additionally, they also had to do this deal with Ericsson in order to fully modernize and open RAN their network, with Fujitsu. Like, I'm not even joking. AT&T is a distant third, relatively speaking, even because, you think about T-Mobile and the reach of their 5G UC and how how their network is used. That's what they want to do, and that's what they need. AT&T, I think, has bigger plans for its network, through enterprise and private edge and stuff like that, and edge compute. But dude, I'm telling you, man, when Randall Stevenson decided to go all Warner Media and all that whole thing and DirecTV, he set them back 10 years. Like the real AT&T won't be a thing until 2026. The real AT&T wireless network. I'm not even joking. No exaggeration. Like, it's going to take that long.
I also want to say, and I know I'm going to get disagreement from the panel, but I actually think that the real Verizon, like the Verizon of network excellence, is still a couple years out as well. Like, I don't think we see true Verizon network excellence until they hit 300 million pop on their C-band deployment.
What if they never hit 300 million pops?
I don't believe that. I believe they will. But if they don't, then if they
what if
don't,
it was 290? Why are you choosing 300 as the number?
Well, I feel like that's just always been the benchmark with every generation, hasn't it?
I don't know. I guess for mid-band, maybe.
I feel like that's always been the case, right? Like with LTE, that was always the milestone that marked the completion of like a build, right? And same thing with 3G.
So you guys, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, man. Go ahead.
I just want to say real quick, I don't think that and this applies to every carrier. The term network excellence is not determined by a hard number of customers served. We all say AT&T is the goat of fiber, Fios is the goat of fiber. They all offer a fantastic product, but they don't. They we're not basing that judgment off of how many pops they cover. There's a difference between providing a quantity or quality, and network excellence is providing that quality alongside the quantity and not one or the other.
I mean, I'd say an NPS score is more relevant to that.
Yeah. But in the case of wireless, right, like to me, when I think of a quality wireless experience, right, I think of a consistent capacitive network that when I go from point A to point B, I can expect a certain level of performance, right? And in the case of my market, because we talked about this on last show, AT&T had made me upset, so I've been using Verizon as my primary. Although, good news, I did get that taken care of, Office of the President, thank you. But I've been using Verizon as my primary, right? And, I can go over to Robinson, have a pretty solid experience on the Verizon network. I can go down to my parents' house, have a tremendous experience on the network. But if I go back to my house, I'm having a poor experience. If I go to Aliquippa, I'm having a poor experience. I don't like if I'm getting little speed islands, right? I don't consider that to be consistent quality. It's the same reason why for a long time in Pittsburgh, I always had beef with T-Mobile. They were like the speed island, right? You'd have one cell site that's fully modernized, 10 gig backhaul, everything like that. You're getting like 1.2 gig or whatever on it, right? But then another site, you're only getting like 10 meg because you're on 5 megahertz of band 71. Like that's not good, right? I'd rather have consistent 100 meg consistently with good coverage, good calling, good texting, but most importantly, the data piece, good quality data, than have little speed islands. And in order to do that, you got to make sure to upgrade your sites and cover and actually upgrade all the sites in that given metro.
Yeah, but it's just about your experience is unique, right? As a customer, your experience is unique, but we should not be defining network excellence by pops covered, that was my whole point.
Fair.
Yeah, because I've seen Sandusky, Ohio, which is like a small town, western Ohio. I mean, it's like 40 miles away from Cleveland. 2 cell phone towers for T-Mobile in that entire town. One of them got 5G UC. T-Mobile said they covered the whole thing, whatever pops was covered there. Meanwhile, Verizon had 9 sites and AT&T had 6 sites. So which network would I rather be on, Dennis?
You'd rather be on Verizon or AT&T.
Whoever's got the redundancy, right? That's kind of my point. I think the depth of the build, even if it's 290 million pops, but the depth is good, I'll take that over 300 million spread. If that means anything with gaps and stuff like that.
So you guys are making good points. I agree with Sneed and EM's point. You guys are making good sense. I think Dennis has made good points as well. So I want to make sure that we pivot back to the finances that we were discussing before. I know that to Dennis's point, the carriers that reduce Capex generally fall behind. That's true. But what we're seeing is the entire industry reduce Capex. And there's a reason for that, because how sustainable is it to have increased Capex? I'm particularly talking about AT&T and Verizon, not T-Mobile, because they're not really pushing the industry forward. I'm talking about the two that really are, that are tasked with doing that. So 24 billion and 20 billion plus is not sustainable at the current rate they're charging the consumer. So if we want that elevated Capex, we got to be willing to pay for it. And as of right now, America is saying that they don't want to, because we just got finished getting, we just got finished getting, over the last part of our discussion in reference to price increases. We talk about it all the time on these podcasts. I think Dennis brought up Verizon $10 increase or something like that on the Fios. These things are going on, and every time they happen, there's a complaint. We're talking about $5. The cost that people are paying today.
You gotta start giving consumers their due. They're paying the 5G fees.
I'm not trying to not give them their dues. What I'm saying
buying
is
the fixed wireless.
The price, but the price that they're paying it at is not necessarily what they should be. If they, So obviously the carrier sets the price, but it's based on where they feel the market will actually pay. Today, if you were to say fixed wireless is $60, would it be selling the way that it is now? Exactly. So with that being said, the carriers
it's
across
not
the
better
industry,
than its competitive offers.
But I mean, Dennis just got finished talking about how fiber increased cost with FiOS.
Yeah, but I didn't get a better product. Like I'm still in the same speed tier. It's not like I got a better product out of the $10 increase.
Well, I mean that's true, not yet. But right now, you don't have access, for example, to the 2 gig offering or to what's coming down the pipe. So all I'm saying, guys, is that elevated Capex isn't free. Like companies can't necessarily keep the pricing or the Capex elevated because we think that they should. Like they have to weigh their margins and all that stuff as well. So it's all about what the consumer is willing to pay for and what those companies are willing to bet that they can charge that the customer will actually be willing to pay. And right now, it's just go ahead.
We've had discussions before, right? Like, well, two parts. On this show, I just talked about how like decisions made a decade ago impact what's happening today. Decisions that the carriers made a decade ago are the reasons why they need to spend the increased Capex today in order to do this 5G build, right? If more fiber was already ran in place, if that was already taken care of, that significantly reduces costs to these macros. If the macros
better performing macros, right?
Yeah, you'd have better performing macros. If they had already acquired the macros or did their cell splits, like that would reduce some of these like upgrade costs, right? And then the second part to this, and we talked about this on many different shows, but if the wireless telco companies want to be able to charge more money, they need to offer either an additional revenue generating unit, so an additional service like the fixed wireless, or they need to offer not just an improved product, but an improved product that actually does something in my real world experience, right? Like I'll take the example of AT&T. AT&T was already getting over 100 megabits per second consistently on LTE, and even sometimes I was seeing like 300, even 600, right? So AT&T going and offering 5G plus for me, well, it gets me all tiddly in my mind and running speed tests and whatnot because 5G plus icon, it didn't change anything about the way I use my phone. Nothing about my phone experience got significantly better. Ping times are still approximately the same as what they were on LTE, so it's not like I'm able to play like ultra fast gaming. And the plans didn't just magically get better with like unlimited hotspot, like or something where like there was like a new use case. So of course, when they raise their rates, consumers are going to be like, yeah, this is whatever. And especially when you start talking about the plans that have restrictions like 40p or 720p video or the 512 kilobit per second hotspot cap. Like when you start throwing on all these things, then it doesn't matter what you did to the network because the plan is limiting you on what you can even use with it.
Maybe he's onto something, B. Maybe there needs to be a reconstruction of plan, like the way it's set up or something.
But that's the thing. Those types of innovations have already been considered. Customers spit them out almost every time. Like, so as it pertains to new use cases, the telco industry, and right now specifically, it's been Verizon. Nobody else is really even trying. The telco industry is the one that's moving the content game forward. All these streaming bundles and everything, like, yo, that's not happening by happenstance. That is a new use case. That is the new bundle. So, I mean, those innovations and stuff, that they are happening as we speak. We don't ever hear about the marginalization of speeds until we talk about price. Any other time, it's let's do a video, let's do content, let's talk about how fast I got connectivity on this particular block. But as soon as you say, okay, let's talk about paying more for it, then all of a sudden the new narrative is, oh, well, my experience hasn't changed. Well, it changed enough for content to be created about how great the speed is now.
Yeah, but B, they don't sell speed tiers. If they sold speed tiers, then I think you have something there. But they don't sell speed. That may come in the future, but as of now, people don't have speed tiers being sold to them, but they are taking advantage of greater throughput speeds than they ever have before.
Yeah, but B, on the content piece, right? You said that was the new use case or innovation. We got streaming because of LTE, right? So going from LTE to 5G did not change anything about the content experience
because the plans are the same, Dennis.
But to that point, all of that revenue from streaming went to the content creators and the distributors, not necessarily to the telcos.
But
the place where the money needed to go to fund the actual infrastructure were the telcos. And so that's what I'm saying when I say, back to my original point, elevated Capex isn't going to come out of thin air, especially when these telcos have investors who've been waiting for X amount of years to get a return on their investment without these dividends. Dividends are really the only reason why, for example, AT&T, Verizon, and now T-Mobile even have investors. So you have an investor base that's hungry for returns, and then you have consumers who want more, but don't necessarily want to pay more. So that's where. Go ahead.
So there's two things that I want to say. First, consumers have shown a willingness to pay more. It is the reason why we see Magenta MAX and Go 5G Plus on T-Mobile having very healthy adoptions, actually, from like a premium standpoint. Like when unlimited plans came back, right? When we went from bucket plans to unlimited plans, people were switching like hotcakes.
Do you know what those numbers are, by the way, Dennis?
Yeah, please tell me, because
I don't.
We talk about it all the time, and Sneed says we don't know what the take rate is for these new plans. So you cannot say that, Dennis. You can't say that. We don't know what the take rate is for these newer plans.
Let me finish. When the offering is right, though, consumers are generally willing to do premium things. And I was gonna look at a different industry to give you a perfect example. Look at smartphones in the U.S. We have seen over time that the adoption rate for phones has skewed towards flagship phones. We went away from like budget smartphones. People are buying iPhones and Samsungs. Now I know there's other factors, such as the fact that there's financing and promos that impact why that is for the US market. But that is what has occurred. People show a willingness to go towards the premium option even if it's like $100 difference or $200 difference, they're willing to do it, right? And that's because there was a smart way to make that happen as far as the sales pitch goes on it, basically.
Man, then
in the same way, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, they could look to do something unique with their plans. They could do like maybe it's the speed tier option. Maybe it's Verizon kind of dipped their toe in it with the My plans, but maybe it really is making a truly customizable plan, basically like what Mobile X is kind of doing, right? Let someone pay an extra $5 or $10 to have uncapped video. Maybe they save a little bit of money by not buying hotspot because that's not important to them. Let them buy, sell them a higher priority data when you're at that stadium or venue event. Sell an upcharge, say $15, and give me QCI 7. Make a whole QCI tier just to me, so that way when I'm at those venues, I know my data is going to work in the most crucial of times. There are definitely ways that you can get creative and generating revenue while offering experiences that can kind of translate. And I'll also just say that when we look at these innovations, right, like going back to the video streaming topic, that was responsive, right? That happened by the nature of LT. And I know you always like to talk about how the content creators benefit more, but those use cases of streaming or like things like Uber are parts of the reasons that made the cell phone that much more essential in people's lives to really use and buy the more expensive plans. And Verizon needs to be future looking, or AT&T or whoever needs to be future looking in their infrastructure deployments to gear up to provide for that next big thing, whether it's AR, VR. They need to be active participants in that experience before it already happens. And if they're really lucky, they'll hit a home run and actually be the one to offer it directly.
Well, to your point, that's exactly what's happened. I mean, you just gave the example of the My Plan structure. I mean, that particular offering is the first time we've ever seen something in that, even close to what you're describing. Now, maybe that's something that happens as the networks mature and all those things, the different spectrum cases and everything roll out and get built out. Maybe those are things that start to get offered in the future. But as it stands right now, that's what the narrative is. I think that's what we're facing right now. We're facing an industry that collectively, it's not just one company, has collectively said, yo, the margins are tight. So if y'all are looking for all this, no, it's time to raise prices. That's what the entire industry is doing right now, not just one company. So it's not a situation where I think any of these companies are, against keeping capex elevated, but I think it's just a business decision. It comes down to how much are you going to build, how great of a network are you going to build, versus what the customer has decided collectively they're willing to pay for that product. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, when Verizon first launched 5G, they had all this stuff going, C-band, all that kind of thing. Not too long ago, they tried to do an upcharge for 5G. I think it was like $10. The customer balked. They said no. So
Did you know where
Verizon
the
said
5G was?
5G was nowhere.
It was nowhere to be found.
So if they did something like that now, you think people would automatically take to it?
Well, they do it through like the application
tiers
of the network, right? So like a better plan or better access. It has to be that way. It can't just be, hey, you want 5G, it's $10. No. It has to be, oh, you want to do more with your device. You want to have a better plan. People understand that language. People don't understand 5G. They understand what they can do with their device.
Yeah.
So
let me get in here because you guys have been absolutely go back and forth.
I'll be quick.
Oh
And to Sneed's point, I've talked to plenty of consumers. It's to the point where they don't even know the difference between Wi-Fi and cellular. If their data stops working, they just get mad. Go ahead.
So you guys are missing two key points that completely absolves the entire conversation that you guys just had. The customer doesn't care if their product works and it works for their needs. They do not care. They don't want they don't want the additional add-ons and the complexity of all these different add-ons and features and things that they can pay for. It sounds good in theory, but the real world application of that to the average consumer would be absolutely terrible, because they're going to add them onto their accounts and then they're going to pay for it for 9 months and not realize it, and then they're going to get pissed at the carrier, and then they're going to churn. You got to keep in mind that what you want as a prosumer, as an enthusiast, isn't going to apply to the customer base. The majority of the customer base.
You're right. They don't understand the features, but that's why you sell them on the experience, right? You talk about how this plan is going to meet their needs after you did, if for anyone that's ever worked sales, right? You always build some rapport and ask some questions to find out a little bit of things about the customer, so you can use it as ammunition, right? If you ever talk to if you ever talk to Verizon or Comcast, right? You always hear questions like, how many devices are you connecting to your network? Oh, 10. And what do? You game, you stream, you got anybody in the house that's gaming or streaming? What are you doing for mobile? They get these questions and they hit you with the sales pitch at the end. Well, based off this, I'd recommend 600 megas per second to you. That might be crazy for them, but they'll be like, your son will be able to game all the time online, no problems. You won't have to hear him at night. You'll be able to do your streaming, your work from home experience will be so much more productive. You tell them about the experiences and how it changes their life, right? Same thing for mobile, right? Oh, you got this brand new phone with a beautiful screen. You're going to want this My Ultimate plan so you can, watch your video that you told me is so important in the highest resolution. You said you're a content creator on TikTok. Well, this plan gives you access to the fastest speeds on our network, so your live streams won't buffer when you're doing your TikTok videos. You just got to translate it into actual experiences.
I did a video where I hotspotted, and I was testing the download and upload speed on 5G ultra-wideband hotspot. Do you think a Verizon sales agent ever did that and showed a customer you can get 300 megabits on your hotspot, which means you could connect 7 devices, 4 devices, 3 devices, right? Here's the uplink on that hotspot so you could stream off a secondary device for your, TikTok or Instagram or whatever. They don't do those things. Even the salespeople at these companies don't know what the hell they're selling. They think of the traditional sense. I need to sell an iPhone, and then hopefully I can attach insurance. Well, how about you get them to take the better plan? How about you get them to take your brand because your network is good? Here's what the network can do. Now get the iPhone. Now get this. Now get that. They don't really know. Even the salespeople can't convince the other people. They just say, "Give me the best deal on your iPhone." It's like it's 2009, bro.
Yeah, but you got to remember, a good salesperson will sell the customer again, experiential selling. You're going to sell the customer what they need, and you're going to give them options. That doesn't mean that you give them a demo, give every single customer a demo pitch on how to download something or upload something on their hotspot. If they give you those cues, obviously yes. But you got to remember, like, they offer a lot of products other than just phones. But yeah, we're getting off topic, and we should just move on from this conversation.
Yeah, let's do this. Let's go.
Fine.
Let's go to this next one, and this will be the final story, and this is the big one for the day. The House of Representatives gives the green light to T-Mobile and their 2.5 licenses. So T-Mobile won, I think, 92% of the licenses in the 2.5 gigahertz Spectrum Auction 108. This particular issue stems from the fact that the FCC was unable to assign the licenses to T-Mobile because they had their spectrum authority stripped away. And Congress, it's really their fault. It's not the FCC's fault. They have no power anymore when it comes to spectrum, which is a horrible place for the U.S. This is a horrible situation for the future of the country when it comes to connectivity and FCC operations. The FCC largely has been ineffective on many levels. This just makes it so much worse. So now T-Mobile gets access to these licenses. I would assume that probably within the next few weeks, maybe within the next couple of weeks, you'll start to see areas across the country for T-Mobile getting access to the spectrum licenses. You should see bandwidth upgrades on existing radios and towers. And from what I understand, some markets is going to be a very sizable bump in bandwidth. Some people are telling me like 57 megahertz is being added to their market. That's huge, because that 57 megahertz on top of 30 or 40 they already have, now you legitimately can have 5G ultra capacity. Now you can have homes that could get a 5G home internet option, an improved capacitive network experience for the mobility side. It's just going to make it a much better experience from a capacity standpoint. And I've said before, there are markets where Verizon started building 5G ultra wideband with C-band, and T-Mobile doesn't have enough capacity to compete, which sounds crazy, but it happened. And Verizon capitalized on those fixed wireless subs, and T-Mobile wasn't able to play because they didn't have their spectrum. So now this kind of levels the playing field, a la what happened with the FCC FAA debacle with respect to C-band. It really feels like that. But now there's some people who I think can rejoice, and it's going to improve the network, and some people are very excited about this. All right, so let me get B Chicken up in here. What up, B Chicken?
Congratulations, T-Mobile.
That's what you've been waiting for this whole time, to say that?
Yeah, I mean, it's congratulations. I mean, it's good for them.
Oh my goodness.
What did I do now? What did I say?
Listen, they can go back to being the GOAT in 5G now, man.
See, this is why I said what I said. Congratulations to T-Mobile. I'm very happy that they're getting their spectrum, whatever. That's great.
In some of these places, Verizon has 200 megahertz of C-band.
Yeah, well, I mean, they won it in the auction. So if T-Mobile wanted more, they could have, bid more. I don't know what to say on that. I don't feel sorry for them. They were allowed to buy a whole company. So, I mean, it is what it is. So I don't know. But
you remember when Randall Jr. said the quiet brilliance of the T-Mobile network? I thought to myself, man, that is a very disjointed spectrum holdings when you got fragmentation across many states and counties where they don't even own the 2.5, they're leasing it.
Very true.
Or they only have a segment of it. It's very fragmented. They have to fill in these gaps, and I mean they're doing it. And I said that before in some content I created. It's not the end of the world that T-Mobile has to fill in the gaps. It's just more complicated, right? It's just things that they have to work through. I mean, we've seen interference issues with N41. We've seen spectrum license flaws in N41, churches and schools and white space license auctions. They're all just complications, right? So when Randall Jr. was saying the quiet brilliance, I was saying quiet brilliance or deficiencies. To me, I thought C-band coming in with these big swaths of spectrum, I thought that was the move. National, contiguous, unfragmented. To me, that makes more sense. Not being disjointed makes it a more, I don't know, efficient process. I put up one radio, one antenna, lots of bandwidth. I don't have to put up N41 and N77 in two different frequencies. You know, even what AT&T is doing, right, at a necessity to reduce cost. I don't like those approaches. My dad taught me a long time ago, in business, you get what you need when you need it, and you do it. And then you operate to your fullest capacity. Don't get cute. Don't play games. Do what you got to do. And don't be cheap on the business, right? And I still, to this day, I think that is the best approach. Still. And I think this kind of proves it. Because look what can happen. FCC gets a spectrum authority lapse. Like, what the hell, man? This shit is crazy. Tech, let me get you in here on this.
Oh, good for T-Mobile. I mean, this is something that I think that they were entitled to from the beginning, but the bill doesn't address the bigger issue that the FCC no longer has authority to issue spectrum, has no oversight. Like, this is a Band-Aid for a larger wound, and I think that needs to be addressed. But you know what'll happen is that this bill gets passed, T-Mobile gets their licenses, and then we forget about it until the next, spectrum auction is about to happen, and then all of a sudden, alarm bells will go off. So we'll see.
Dennis, let me get you in here.
Sorry, this is in regards to the extra spectrum. I think it's good, and as far as the fragmentation goes, I think it'll be a long-term problem for T-Mobile, and I hope that they can get some cash flow going to acquire the license to properly own them. Otherwise, I think it's going to be really bad for them.
How are they going to get the cash flow?
It's complications, you know what I mean? It just brings wild cards into the whole thing.
Yeah.
How are they going to get the cash flow?
Well, I mean, their fixed wireless product is doing pretty well. That's helping to generate additional ARPU for revenue for them per account, and they could always look to start charging and monetizing the free lines that they had provided.
Hey, Sneed, I'm sorry, my bad, man. I'm sorry.
How do they structure that, Dennis? I'm just curious because that's going to be tough, man.
The free lines thing. Well, yeah. We talked about the Boy and the Frog piece earlier, but I think it starts with free lines instead of it being free. The discount, basically the discount works out so it's $5 per line. Doesn't sound like a lot at first, but I mean, if a person has like 8 free lines, you're talking $40 of revenue.
Man, how many people got 8 free lines on their account, man?
I mean, that was always, a reckless thing for them to have done. I mean, they pretty much boxed themselves into a hole.
They did it for like 15 years, man.
Yeah, and that's why I say what I say. I mean, they kind of boxed themselves into a hole, and now you're going to be punching above your weight just to be able to try to compete with companies who have no problem charging their customers for what they feel they're worth.
There's also the forced plan migrations of the legacy Sprint customers, which has been occurring. That's going to generate them more revenue, the forced migrations.
And perhaps more churn. I don't know. I mean, their churn was elevated last quarter. I mean, we'll see. I think they're going to have the worst churn in the quarter. So, risk. I mean,
absolutely.
There's definitely risk that's there. It's not going to be easy for them, but it's going to be necessary. It's going to be what they have to do. Because, again, it goes back to my point about finances. This stuff isn't cheap and it's not free. And unfortunately, T-Mobile put in a lot of people's mind that they're entitled to free or significantly reduced. And it's like, yo, that's now being deprogrammed as we speak. And they're the ones who had to go first. And it is very hard, but it's going to happen. And people will go the MVNO route for now until MVNO prices start to increase. And you see very little difference between MVNO pricing and entry-level pricing on postpaid. That's where we're going. That's what's going to happen. It is going to happen. It has to, because this stuff's not cheap. And right now, the carriers, I'm sure behind closed doors, are saying, "Man, is 6G even worth it? Let's prolong it. Let's put it off for a few more years and see if we can try to get some more money off the 5G, off the gigabit speeds that we're already seeing."
Who's calling for 6G though? Consumers aren't calling for 6G. They're trying to learn and understand 5G.
Well, consumers weren't calling for Netflix or GPS on their phones either. But when it was introduced to them, they ate it like crazy. Like if you wait for a consumer to demand something, it won't happen. Right? It's the truth. They weren't clamoring for Netflix either.
Oh,
but you build it, you introduce it to the market, and then they adopt it. That's how it works. But the consumer generally is not the driver of innovation. It really happens the other way around.
I'm gonna harken on what you're saying, B. And it's like a quote from like Ford. Consumers don't know what they want, and if you listen to consumers, they'd say faster horses.
Exactly. It's the truth, man. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful because I'm a consumer too. But throughout history, it hasn't been the consumer that's driven innovation. Generally, it's been the other way around. It's been the business. You build it, and then you sell it, and then the consumer adopts it, and then next thing you know, it becomes a necessity. Then you start to get politicians to talk about this is a right. Okay, I'm gonna take it. I'm not gonna go there, but it's the truth. It happens. It happens. So I mean, with the Capex and all that other kind of stuff going on, I mean, I don't know. I think carriers are having.
You made me laugh, bro. You made me laugh. You said they didn't know they wanted GPS.
It's true. I mean, I had no idea. I mean, you know, many of us were okay with MapQuest and print it out and let's go.
No,
and the next thing you know, man, whatever, man. People were happy with that. And the next thing you know, they were introduced something better, and then MapQuest went away because it was on your phone. And then when those things, like, people don't know what they need until they are exposed to it. Now everybody wants a streaming product of some sort, and they want access to it on the go. But that wasn't a thing 10 years ago, 12 years ago.
Yes,
not at scale.
Hi.
What's up, Yasmin? What's going on?
Say hi, everybody.
About to go to bed.
About to go to bed? That's cool. That's cool. I wish I could go to bed. I'm still working.
You being good for Sneed?
Yeah.
Remember, if you're not good, Santa won't come.
Santa's not real.
There you go, yeah. There you go, yeah.
You want to tell everybody who your favorite network provider is? Who's the favorite cell carrier?
Verizon.
Verizon's your favorite?
Yeah.
What happened to T-Mobile? I thought you like the stocks.
They're not really good.
She's a smart girl. She's a smart girl. Good job. Good job.
Verizon.
Verizon's
good job.
Good. What about AT&T? You know AT&T's our home internet provider.
I know.
Yeah.
Second.
They're second. What about T-Mobile? Aren't they the 5G goat?
Good job, Yasmin. Good job. Exactly. Thank you, Yasmin.
Sneed, what have you done to this sweet child? You've indoctrinated her?
Well, I think what happened was one time we went to use one of my phones and it had a T-Mobile SIM and it didn't work. So I had to put a Verizon line on it, and then it started working. And then she remembers that.
Also, am I dumb? Or
whenever I like T-Mobile, he does it, and whenever I don't like it, he does.
Yeah, she's 7. She's too smart, bro.
I'm 8.
Dude, I believed in Santa until I was like, I don't know, like 10. I feel like I was old.
Yeah, this means she's too smart for her own good, bro. She already sniffed it out.
Dang, dude.
I know multiplication and division.
Look, you expect her to know Santa Claus is real? She can do multiplication and division, bro.
Yeah, man, you got to keep the magic alive, bro. That's like the best part. That's like the best part about like kids, dude. Is Christmas time and like doing the whimsical lights and the decorations and everything like that.
Waking up in the morning in a suit with eating all the cookies
go
and
ahead.
milk.
So Blind G Check said Santa uses T-Mobile. I guess that's why he's not real. So, all right.
Sure hope not. None of your presents will get delivered on time.
Yeah, exactly.
Santa uses Dish. That's what he uses.
That explains so much.
Raging Dusty, yeah, and 257 is millimeter wave. It's I think it's the 24 gigahertz band, if I remember correctly.
Sounds right.
But yeah, in regards to this, I mean, I'm glad.
Or no, 28 gigahertz. Sorry,
28. Yeah, it's 28.
So Sneed, now that they have access to these licenses, what does that mean nationwide? Like how much N41 now, like nationwide?
Well, it's still fragmented. So in some places, even in the places that have these white space licenses added, they still may only have 37 megahertz. Bro, there are places where they had no N41. Now they have some, right? There's places where please stop laughing. There's places where they used to have 57, now they have 87. They used to have, 57, now they have 127. It doesn't solve their entire national problem with the N41 piece. It remedies in a lot of places, right? It legitimately allows them to have 5G home internet in places where they just couldn't before.
Now, question for you: in the places where they're having less than, let's call it less than 80 megahertz, are those the areas that they managed to pick up C-band or something else, DoD, to supplement?
Not usually. Usually they got C-band and DoD in urban. Most of these are going to be in, rural kind of spread out areas where it's low population density.
So what I'm hearing is that T-Mobile is going to suck in rural, is what I'm hearing.
Already,
they're going to be rural. They're going to be okay where they have towers. They haven't addressed their coverage issues. These spectrum licenses don't solve coverage issues.
No, but I'm talking about for fixed wireless solutions, which is like if we're looking at AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile fixed wireless solution in rural, I'm saying that T-Mobile is going to suck. Like AT&T.
You know where T-Mobile's got a weird issue, Dennis?
What's that?
Where they have the non-contiguous N41. It's like 30 megahertz in this block, and then there's like a big gap of 30 or 40 megahertz. Then they have another 40 megahertz of it, and they have to use 2 carrier aggregation for that. Now, where this matters is very simple. If a phone can only do 2 carrier NR, it's going to do N71 and one of the N41s.
Yep.
It's not going to do 2 N41s, and even if it did do the 2 N41s, it's going to have horrible uplink.
As you call them,
standalone, right? AT&T, so it's a problem.
AT&T has the same problem with LTE and 5G, right? Because remember back in the LTE era, AT&T was very fragmented with their PCS. You had the 2 carriers of band 2. You had the 66 also being like.
So Dennis, who's pushing their customers to get newer phones so they can have 4 carrier NR?
T-Mobile.
So that way they can utilize the DoD and the C-band simultaneously with the N41 and the N25 and the N71. So they can get all that. Bro, this is not ideal. It is absolutely not ideal.
So I just want to understand how they expect to compete going forward.
Going forward, you get better devices with more carrier aggregation, but I'm just saying it's not ideal right now.
They're still not wide channels, though. That's the bigger issue.
And if it's not contiguous, it's never going to work as well as a carrier who does have contiguous. Like, I
don't think that's this. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily true though, because AT&T, like I was talking about, was very fragmented, but they've been able to achieve network performance parity.
Industry worst uplink.
Network performance parity with what?
Industry worst uplink. And that's not even arguable. The data speaks. Industry worst uplink.
About to say parity with whom or what, Dennis?
Well, whoever told you that carrier aggregation can solve the lack of non-contiguous spectrum or the lack of contiguous spectrum sold you a bill of goods.
Yeah, like that's not going to happen.
Talk to what's his name? Scalps boy. What's his name? I'm blanking here. Help me.
Zero cool.
Thank you. I remember doing Scalps boy.
I mean, it's science. Contiguous channels. It's RF.
Yeah, it's science. That's how it works. So if you don't have it contiguous, it's never going to work as well as the carrier who does. And the one that has the most contiguous, 5G mid-band spectrum is Verizon. I mean, we keep going in circles, but I mean, it's the truth, guys. It's the truth.
So if I look at the carrier aggregation stuff, you're going to need more. Like every time you have a generation of like spectrum auction, you now need an upgrade to like consumer handsets. Number 1 is for band compatibility, and number 2 is for aggregation.
Well, yeah, that's business as usual. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But Verizon will have iPhone 12s cooking with gas, and Verizon's going to have iPhone 13's cooking with gas. An iPhone 12 on T-Mobile is like not taking advantage of N71, N25, N41 in combo. You see what I'm saying? Meanwhile, Verizon's just C-band right now, right? So they'll have a 100 megahertz channel cooking, right? So if it's a fragmented N41, an iPhone 12 is going to be a bad experience. So that person has to upgrade to get a better experience. And actually, the iPhone's a problem too. I'm going to call a spade a spade. The iPhone is always behind with respect to aggregation. I mean, if anybody gives a damn about cellular, they're only going to mess with the Galaxy.
Absolutely. That's not by accident. It's not by accident either. It's not by accident either.
I disagree. I think in terms of standalone, yeah, that there's an argument to be made there, but I think in general the iPhone performs at level with the Samsungs, especially the new iPhones.
How many months before the iPhone catches up to a Galaxy of the previous year?
With non-standalone, that's probably true, Em. But standalone is where we're going. And so if that's where we're going, then long term at scale, I mean, iPhones are behind the 8 ball. So, I mean, if it's me, I'm going to go Samsung until such a time as there's another manufacturer who can give me the same sort of quality performance.
I mean my iPhone has consistently had better uplink performance than Samsung every generation. Like, I'm going to have to also slightly disagree. iPhone, I've had ever since the iPhone 12 and on.
How many on our carriers can the iPhone do?
Right now, it can do 3.
It can do 4.
Okay,
the newest generation.
So the Galaxy does more with respect to all carrier networks, including, especially if you wanted to mess with Dish.
Oh god.
Well, I think the bigger problem is that we don't have a real standalone network where any OEM can test their devices and get their devices tuned correctly. I mean, we have Dish that has a half-baked SA network. T-Mobile has like a fake standalone network, and
right.
they don't have Vonar in any of their Nokia markets. Like, it's not a real standalone network to begin with. So if you're going to optimize your phone's performance for what's available to the consumer, you're going to optimize it for non-standalone.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's not a huge rush for anybody to come out with a standalone product across the country because the customer isn't really screaming for it. I mean, carriers are able to get multi-gig speeds without standalone, still using an LTE core. So there's still meat on the bone with 5G. That's what I mean. It leads me back to the point I was making before. I don't think 6G is coming out in 2030. I think it's probably 2032, maybe 2033. It's just not. Go ahead.
All due respect, you are in the biggest market on this side of the Western Hemisphere. All right. I'm in the number 14 PA. EM, what are you in the top 50 PA?
Yes.
See what I'm saying? Like, this is like, Dennis, you're in a top 50 PA, top 25, top 20, whatever. Like, there are scenarios and situations where the carriers and the aggregation and the channels will be a requirement. Like, to have it is the difference between you having an optimal experience and you having a less than optimal experience. I mean, I just got done talking to a doctor, and he was telling me about how his service on Verizon has been poor. He's on an iPhone 11. He frequents the same places I do. I'm thinking to myself, you just got to get a new phone, and then I think you could reevaluate your network experience.
Yeah, he's probably getting all LTE.
So I'm not saying you have to have the most recent phone, but like, having a modern phone is game changing for a lot of folks.
I agree with you, but a modern phone, like to EM's point, a modern phone still is going to connect you to non-standalone most of the time because there isn't a carrier that's deployed a standalone product commercially nationwide.
But we got to get more people at least to that point, right? Modernizing their phone.
Yeah, that's true. If you're on an LTE phone right now, you're wasting money. And to Sneed's point about the importance, no, I've already talked about this. I told you how T-Mobile got better at my house. I didn't know why, and then I finally checked the service mode on my Samsung was because N25 was here, 25 megahertz, and it went from me having really poor uplink to be consistently getting like 10 to 25 meg upload. at my house because I have N25 carrier aggregating. So
I can guarantee you your performance would have been similar if they had that on band 2 LTE with a non-standalone 2 carriers of N41.
I can promise you right now.
How much bandwidth would it be if it was all just? I mean, it would be 20 megahertz channels only for LTE. So with NR, they could actually make that PCS a wider channel.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can promise you right now, EM, that before N25 went live on the towers from my home site, it was 5 megahertz to 71 with 100 megahertz to N41. Now with the changes that they made, it's for standalone, it's 10 megahertz N71, 100 megahertz N41, 40 megahertz of N41, and then N25.
Okay, but my point is, and this is what I want to segue to real quick. At the end of the day, the problem is that it's not even a problem; it's a good thing. Customers are hanging onto their devices longer. They are not upgrading nearly as fast. Therefore, you have to keep your network available to those customers because they're not upgrading as often. And like the carriers, and every carrier is guilty of this. They're not going back and adding support for different carrier ag combos to older devices. We put
Oh,
AT&T
like a
on blast.
recertification or something?
Yeah,
we put AT&T on blast for the DoD thing.
Yeah,
Verizon could have gone back and added 2 carrier ag support for the S21s because it was technically capable of doing it, but they didn't because it costs money.
But they cost money. Why would you do that when the solution's already been built and the solution is to upgrade? Like it's a business. Like the whole purpose of this is not for people to camp out on the phones that they have. It's for them to catch up or to stay current with the technology.
The crazy thing about those old phones,
catch-22 when they're all pushing for standalone networks.
Yeah, but
those older phones, guys, like they got crappy batteries, they got older cameras. Like there's 17 reasons to upgrade. It shouldn't be hard to convince a consumer.
Yeah, but I also
especially when it's a 3-year agreement, and they're giving you $1,000. I mean, you're pretty much almost getting free phones nowadays.
Okay, but you're touching on the point that I want to bring up real quick. Financing deals across the board have been getting longer. It's 3 years now, so EM's point is very valid, right? We talked about EM talked about the S21. That's just now going to be going on 3 years old. So that customer was having a worse experience for no reason, all because of the fact that a firmware push didn't happen for certification for the 2-way carrier ag.
Yeah,
right?
We're talking about every single year these devices are coming out. They're supporting new features that the other ones haven't. I mean, you have an S21 that doesn't support the 2 carrier ag on C-band. You have an S22 that doesn't support 4 carrier ag on standalone. The S23 every single year we're improving the compatibility of these devices, and the customers just aren't keeping up. Therefore, your network support is going to lag behind what the majority of your consumers have, right? Like
that's all the more reason to slow down the 6G deployment, to give people time to catch up, and also to monetize the network that you're currently building and will soon be fully built out. At the end of the day, it's the consumer that asks for cheaper pricing on the devices. That's the whole reason why, the carriers, AT&T and Verizon specifically, went to 3 years from 2. It was to lower the cost of phones monthly. That's what the consumer asked for.
Hey, B, you want to know how you can, we were talking about plans and modernization earlier. You want to know how we could get consumers to be on the latest hardware? Rentals. Do what cable does, like a modem rental, do a device rental. $15 a month. The customer never owns it. Perpetual rental. They change it out every year. You want to keep them current. That's how you do it. Because if you're talking about slowing down, you're going to be waiting a decade. I mean, look at how long look at the 3G shutdown and how there were still people using devices that couldn't do VoLTE, for Pete's sake. So,
but then you're talking about increased operating costs for the resale and refurbishment of those old devices.
Exactly. So now the carrier has got that on. Yeah.
There's a lot of overhead.
Yeah, and it's just not profitable.
I mean, the carriers could also just start, what's it called? What do you call it when you stop providing for sports phone? I was going to say decommission, but that's the wrong word. But end of life. You can end of life devices sooner. Like Verizon could stop doing activations sooner on older devices if they wanted to. Same with T-Mobile.
Yeah, but the threshold is still LTE, right? That's the common denominator.
Yeah.
So it's like they're gonna have to support LTE, at least connected devices, maybe not traditional phone. They're gonna be supporting LTE for another 10 years at least.
Which, on that note, LTE still got a lot of lifeblood in it. I really don't understand why the carriers are being so aggressive already, moving their
channel bandwidth. Channel bandwidth. It was 20 megahertz a carrier.
It's only T-Mobile that's aggressive with it right now.
Oh, with refarm?
Yeah.
Well, Verizon is talking about doing it with their CBRS, which has been the only saving grace on their LTE side at the moment in urban.
Yeah, but that's just down. It's
Sneed,
really just down. It's just downlink.
Verizon 1366 only.
No, that sucks, bro.
I said nothing. I'm muted. I haven't said anything.
So, N48 is a different conversation than let's move our coverage layer.
N48 is a one-sided spectrum, right?
Yeah,
it's one-sided. So it's literally downlink throughput. It doesn't even complete calling, right? No. So it was literally a capacity boost for downstream, and moving it to N48 wouldn't change anybody's experience. Like you've got 60 or 65% of the base on NR right now. So moving it to 5G actually makes a lot of sense. Moving the base network bands is a little touchy. Do I want to touch band 2? Do I want to touch band 66? Do I want to touch any more of that stuff? Maybe not just yet. Maybe another year or two, especially with AWS. I don't think they should touch AWS for a couple of years. Band 13 is going to stay LT as long as my channel exists. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So like that's going to stay. But I mean, here band 5 has been N5. You know, I don't even know if you can connect to band 5 anymore. I think it's all N5. And now at this point,
same here in Pittsburgh.
Well, because there were so many issues with DSS. I mean, DSS is still a terrible technology that should have never been implemented. It's had
you had to get an icon, yeah.
I know.
They gave into that, icon. You know. They had to do it. I mean, John Leisure pushed the issue. 5G low band. Here we go.
Yeah, but here's the thing: low band.
And everybody's like, "Man, 5G is trash," and it's like, dude, you're connected to a 10 megahertz channel, a 5 megahertz channel. You know?
Here's the thing: low band is still really important, in my opinion. In fact, I would argue. What's up?
For what?
Well, it helps the midband propagate further, and it also is it's very important for your calling and your uplink.
Calling?
Yeah, calling and your uplink.
That's it.
Well, then, by that logic, T-Mobile should not be refarming all of their low band to NR because when you refarm spectrum from LTE to NR, it reduces the range. It does.
Yep.
It may not be drastic, but it does.
You know what? The only frequency that works in the lab right here for T-Mobile, the only reliable frequency that works in the lab,
band 71,
band 12.
5 megahertz of band 71, not N71, band 71.
But I was gonna actually say it would be really beneficial to Verizon, I think, to scoop up an extra 10 megahertz of low band so they could just dedicate it to their standalone 5G network.
Who?
Verizon.
Oh, you want them to get some additional low band?
Yeah, I want them so badly too. I want them to scoop it up. That dish low band. I want Verizon to scoop it up.
Hold on, I want to address Blind G's comment here. My favorite carrier in London was 3 UK. They have a really solid mid-band network there. We've got 100 megahertz of N78, and it performs like it's amazing. EE is another good one. But they have a really good LTE network. Their NR is kind of mid.
And then there's Vodafone.
Vodafone was trash. So was O2.
Isn't Vodafone owned by Verizon, or wasn't Vodafone Verizon's parent company at one point?
like a decade and a half ago, yeah.
Did you say Verizon owned Vodafone?
Or Vodafone owned Verizon? It was one of the two.
It was joint.
It was a joint partner. It was a 50. There was a split there, and that's why the Frontier markets or Verizon sold off to Frontier to get that money, and now they're wholly
they
owned.
Still owe money from that deal, Ian?
Not surprised.
That was a crazy big deal to pay off Vodafone, man.
I mean, you're talking about T-Mobile US paying off DT. That's what you're talking about.
Hey, so Sneed, real quick, by the way, since we're kind of just spitballing, remember on last episode I was telling you about how AT&T made me really, really, really upset?
Mm-hmm.
I put in a Better Business Bureau proper complaint, and I got a call from the office of the president of AT&T, and that's what it took. I finally got my issue settled. They gave me a $400 credit, and I feel whole.
So now AT&T's the goat again, and you'll start using the network?
No, I still have the minute I took that call on the AT&T line, I immediately switched it back off. I have the Verizon line on, set to primary. I'm still using the Verizon network.
Bro, Verizon is trash. Why are you using that network?
I mean, they're trash at my house. EM knows I'm not lying, but
we were sitting on Cellmaver, and I was like looking at where his sites are in relation to his house, and it's interesting.
And he knows AT&T literally truly does have like a cell site like right up my essentially like right next to my house.
He's got like a small cell or something. He's getting like 300 meg off of it. It's a pretty good small cell for what it is.
Yeah, 350 down, like 70 to 100 meg up. It's very delicious also. But yeah.
If you have a problem with the way that we issue Spectrum licenses here, you should look into how they did it in the UK. It's a joke.
I want a Spectrum swap to happen. What I want to happen is I want T-Mobile to be allowed to swap all their N41 to have some sweet contiguousness, so they're not doing like 6-way carrier ag of N41. At least give them 100 megahertz nationwide. Let them have that. I want Verizon to have additional spectrum allocated for mid-band. I feel like Verizon with their customer set should have at minimum like 260 nationwide of mid-band. AT&T also should have like at least 200 megahertz of mid-band nationwide. Sneed's smirking, but I'm being serious. Everyone needs more mid-band here.
I don't know if you notice, I'm changing everybody's headline.
Oh, I did not notice. You put me back to Dennis Chicken again, huh?
Let's see, giving out this chicken.
Oh, you know what I would also love? I would love it if we could get another $2 trillion budget, but specifically solely focused on infrastructure. And when I say infrastructure, I'm talking power lines, I'm talking water. Because fun fact, Sneed, I don't know if you knew this or not. CNBC recently did a video about 2 days ago on YouTube. My state of Pennsylvania ranks the worst in the entire country for drinkable water quality. Fun fact. Every single one of the water municipalities failed one or more of the EPA standards. So, yeah.
That's awful, man. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I got a filter.
Yeah, I was going to say RO, dude.
Cancer. Only a little bit of cancer in the water with those forever chemicals. Well, forever chemicals, man. Forever chemicals are in the water. They're in your water, too. Ohio ranks sixth worst in the country for drinking.
Yeah,
water.
but our treatment facilities are really good here.
No. That's your drink. Your treatment facilities, your drinking water. You guys rank sixth worst in the country.
Dennis, I've been to my local treatment facility. I know what they do in their testing.
Well, yours might be better, but
yeah. I like, for example, our water treatment facility is Crown Filtration. They are like renowned for excellence in water quality. Like, I've taken my students there for our environmental science class to see the process, how they test and how they purify, and the hard work and systems that they put together for it. It's incredible. It's pristine.
Yeah,
I can't comment or speculate on other treatment facilities. I can only speak to that one.
I'm gonna bet you money though that facility is not filtering out the forever chemicals.
That's probably something worth investigating.
I'm gonna bet you heavy money. I would bet you heavy money, because just now Biden put through a thing to start actually measuring that, like having water treatment facilities actually measure that, and to start working on removing it. And forever chemicals are your PFAs and stuff like that came from like Teflon and all that fun stuff. So, but yeah.
Oh, Dennis, by the way, the speed test channel member.
Yeah.
I think he's from your neck of the woods, Altoona or something.
Altoona is like by State College. No, that's like central Pennsylvania.
Yeah. I think it's where he's by. He's got a business out there too. He's got I don't know. I'll connect you guys on Twitter so you can see some of the stuff that he posts.
Okay.
And what he does. He's got a good operation going on, dude. They run a WISP, wireless ISP. Ooh. Yes, and they do good work, dude. They put up some high quality gear. They get people connected, man. Give them broadband. They got a good operation, man. Shout out to Crow's Nest, man.
Oh, dude, I love seeing his tweets. They're super cool. Super cool stuff.
But
he shared a lot of stuff with me too. He's kind of shown me some of the things that go on, within the shelters and putting up the equipment. And I've also got kind of see the consumer side of things, right?
That's really awesome,
yeah, it's cool, man. It's good.
But I got off topic. TLDR though, we need a massive infrastructure spend across the board for networking purposes, like power for these cell sites to be able to be put up in more places, the roads, the cabinets, like so much stuff needs to be.
Tell him more chicken. Tell him.
Yep.
I'm saying the government needs to provide the money. What do you mean? I'm saying the government needs to allocate.
I know. Me too. I know.
When you get that fiber going and that electric going and backup power for these cell sites should be a mandated thing, and the government should help supply that because we need to make our networks more resilient.
Look, bro, I'm just trying to get more chicken, bro. You're talking about infrastructure. I just need more chicken.
Yeah, you're right, man. I want 99.999% uptime. I need more chicken. When Verizon installs my fiber, I want all of the pairs. I don't just want one strand. I want 8 pairings. So if one,
what does that get you? Up capacity.
I mean, dude, 8 pairings. You could do 100 gig. You could push 100 gig through that.
100 gig on a single fiber. What do you mean?
I'm about to say you do 100 gig on one fiber. One strand.
You can do 800 gig on one fiber.
But but what's their technology of choice? Like, what's it going to take for them to do it at Dennis's house?
You would need to do.
You need a full-blown OTN network
to
the customer, and that's never going to happen because it would cost you hundreds of billions of dollars to do.
I mean, I was
Dennis just got finished complaining about a $10 increase.
I was talking about, hey, there you go. There's my extra $10. Hey, I was talking about having multiple pairs. So when your text cut my fiber line again, which will never happen, at least I'll be good with my backup pairing.
So let me ask you this, Dennis. You want multiple pairings run to your house, all run, if you got a fiber that runs to your house, right? All 8 of those fibers are going to be in the same piece of cable. So if it gets cut, guess what? All 8 of those fibers are going to get cut. Right. So unless you want diverse paths into your house, coming from completely different locations.
Yes, that's what I want. I want to be hooked up at 8 different nodes with 8 different backup redundant power supplies. More chicken. Yeah, more chicken. For that $10 that you're charging me, more chicken.
More chicken, bro.
I'm just busting your guys' shot.
You got Sneed Chicken, the CFO of More Chicken, giving out less chicken. You got EM Chicken, who is the CEO of More Chicken. You got B Chicken, who says no chicken for you, and then Dennis got the frozen chicken.
Wait, why am I frozen chicken?
I couldn't think of anything else, bro.
Frozen eggs, bro.
I didn't know what position to give you. Did you want to be the CMO of More Chicken or Less Chicken?
We're fine with frozen chicken, honestly. It's cold up in here in Pittsburgh, and my chicken will last. I'll give you more chicken, and it will last. It'll get you through the hard times.
You ain't giving people more chicken, Dennis. If you were running a business, you would be the same way.
Yep.
Where's Boost, bro?
If I was running a business, if I was president of some telco company for a day, I would legitimately be looking at my spend and saying, okay, it's cheaper now to do this than later. It's never going to be cheaper. And I'd be betting on the fact that by me doing the investments today, that it will eventually allow me to gain more customers than I would have otherwise not gotten. By me improving my coverage and service in markets where I don't have good market share already, it would put me in a position where I could now accept those increased customers. Especially I'd be looking at places where the population is spiking from massive amounts of immigration and other factors, or if there's lots of like down in Arizona where they're building the microchip fabs, right? I'd be looking over there to get all my cell sites modernized because I know there's going to be a ton of people moving down there to go work at that fab. And there's going to be jobs that are created because of that fab, and the economy, and that local economy is going to be popping. And I know I'm going to be able to generate much more ARPU as the quality of income rises and people buy up the houses there. And I could hit them up with like 3 different products. I could sell them on the wireless. I could sell them on the home internet. And then, hopefully some of those people will be decision makers and I can get the enterprise deal. Try to get my small cells in there and help them with their automation of their machines.
That sounds all fine and dandy, but you don't think that companies aren't already doing that? And aren't planning for that stuff. I mean, the big limitation in terms of telco expansion is administrative and is red tape. It's red tape
And money.
and money. Like,
Yo, Dennis, I changed your name. Is it good now? Choking chickens?
Oh God.
the only company that's not spending now and choosing to spend later is T-Mobile. They're the only ones that are choosing not to deploy fiber. They're not getting it in the ground now. It's going to be exponentially more expensive.
Don't tell Masa, bro. Don't tell Masa.
Oh God, dude! Don't even get me started.
I mean, AT&T is kind of getting a little squealy on the spend, and even Verizon's been changing their tone around their small cell talk. I mean, Sneed, you did an article around like a week or something ago.
I just said why. I just said a few minutes ago why. I mean, I literally just talked about it. I mean, I thought I was clear. It's return on investment. It's return.
Yeah,
you have to have a return.
Apparently, Verizon doesn't have faith then that those builds will get them more customers and more revenue. Then that's all I'm hearing. I don't have faith in my product, so I'm going to peel back.
It's not just Verizon; it's the entire industry.
Dude,
everybody's reducing.
Just because your friends jump off a bridge doesn't mean you should jump off with them. If Verizon,
if it makes financial sense to jump off that bridge, yes, I'm jumping too.
If Verizon,
if it makes financial sense,
hold on. If Verizon had faith in their previous business decision and the fact that their product is going to allow them to make more revenue in the future, they would keep hedging their bets and go through these trying times. Trying times is really what dictates the character of a man. And
oh my God!
And a boss. It's true. It's true. Right now. No, it's true. Right now. Verizon should continue to be investing more and more. In fact, I would argue when interest rates were low and when debt was cheap, Verizon should have been more aggressive about getting their debt back.
That's what they did.
I'm saying more aggressive than the 10 billion. I'm saying they should have got even more aggressive than that. I'm saying
spend more. You're right. When customers barely want to, you know what? You're right, Dennis.
Yeah. Spend more when we're in the middle of the race to the bottom in terms of pricing. That makes a lot of sense.
It's just ridiculous.
Look, here's the vibes I'm getting from Dennis, because I don't think Dennis is either Dennis is being misunderstood or maybe his delivery isn't really trying to get to what his point is. Dennis doesn't want to see he doesn't want to see a network not reach its potential, and I think that's basically where this is going. We know what Verizon can do. They have the pedigree for networking. So seeing them peel back Capex next year would be one of those things that would be like just disappointing, right? And we understand the economics of it. We get it. All four of us get it here. It would just be disappointing, and I don't think it would negatively impact the network to the point where it would make it a lesser experience. I still think Verizon will have the best network next year, even if they were to relax their Capex slightly. I believe that, because the others are relaxing their Capex too. Nobody's jumping out ahead. Nobody's running out to spend $50 billion on a network. Nobody's willing to do that. So carriers peeling back makes sense. They've already done a bulk of their upgrades. Like if I count the number of macro cells that Verizon has upgraded,
especially when the customer's going to complain about a
macros, right? AT&T's upgraded their network. They're still upgrading. T-Mobile's done all their 5G UC with respect to N41. Like a bulk of that mid-band for like this era, this first phase of 5G, that part's done. The next era is going to be a more moderate build pace. It's not going to be blazing, because the blazing was literally dedicated to fixed wireless access. There's no other way to support it, right? The ROI from fixed wireless is funding the network spend, but nothing else is actually funding the network spend. It's just keeping the lights on, paying the bills, and whatever the network is as a whole, right?
And you got to remember that the big spend was to get the majority of people covered. Like, they've already done it. They've got, what, 220?
Yeah, because the network was hurting. You had to get spectrum on air. That was the bottom line. You had to support your mobile usage, and you had to support your fixed wireless access growth.
But what I'm getting at is that they've already covered the majority of the country, or the majority of the people in this country with their C-band. Even if they reduce Capex, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to... yes, technically the network build is going to slow down, they're still going to be expanding the C-band coverage into rural, but in rural, you're not upgrading as many sites.
They're going to be building new sites.
And building new sites with the
Yeah,
vertical
they will.
bridge thing.
Guys,
Yeah.
I found it right outside my county. There's a brand new zero build for Verizon.
Oh, Sneed, you reminded me of something. Did you get my at Twitter? AT&T just put up a new site as well out here in Pittsburgh, down in something county. I'm blanking on it.
But you know what's interesting about that, Dennis, is AT&T has FirstNet. So if they have coverage gaps, I mean, that's something they have to address. Verizon adding tower sites, I think, is a little bit more impressive because they're not getting paid to do it.
Fair.
Right? So I'm more impressed by zero builds from Verizon, especially if they run their own fiber, especially if they run MCI.
They're the only company of the three that hasn't taken one of those, government handouts.
It's that is 100% facts.
I feel like Verizon's gotten state handouts on a state level.
For which service, Dennis? For which build?
Here we go.
So I know for a fact they got it for their Fios build because we've already talked about this before.
Yes.
And I believe.
Oh, come on, Moose. Really, bro? We got a Moose sighting now, dude.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they got it for their wireless too. Whenever they were decomming their DSL.
How you gonna show up late to your own podcast?
As part of the
we've been here, bro. We've been waiting.
And I believe they got it for the wireless as well. As part of their agreement to be able to decommission their DSL in certain parts of their footprint, they had to go over and hook up those homes with like an LT to like RG11 converter for like landline, and they had to build out coverage. They had to prove that they had coverage, and it was like
how long ago was this? Are we talking about the last 3 years?
15 years ago.
No, yeah, we're talking like 8 years ago.
Yeah, but Dennis, come on, man.
You said the comment was Verizon never got a handout, and I said that's not really true.
Dennis, can we talk in good faith? Can we not do that?
That's a fact. They got government money too. That's a fact.
Jesus Christ.
Yo, Moose, jump in, man. Talk to me, Moose. You're just getting in. Come on, bro.
I apologize. It's been a long week already. So what's the topic right now? Because I didn't see but Dennis is going off about decommissioning. So what's the topic?
He's ranting about some bogus thing that happened like 10 years ago. Don't worry about it.
And in typical Dennis fashion, not able to let anything go.
Well, I mean,
back in 1950, man, come on.
No, he made a comment that Verizon never got a government handout, and my response was they did.
Well, remember,
I'm talking about in the 5G era in the last 3 years. Then it's not in 1962.
I said it was 8 years ago, man. It wasn't that long ago.
8 years is an eternity.
8 years. 8 years is like a century in the
like 3 generations
right
attack, man. All right, Cha-Cha, what you want to discuss, bro? We talked about the House of Representatives passing the bill that had the T-Mobile spectrum in it for Spectrum Auction 108.
That was big.
That was big, and it kind of helps them address the needs of the network in those places.
Yep.
Getting 37 megahertz of spectrum, 57. Like some places with some legitimate bandwidth. And then we went off on tangents.
Yeah.
And I renamed everybody your Cha-Cha Pollo, so we got you in there. Yeah.
So we got to talk about the elephant in the room that I unfortunately haven't been able to be on the podcasts. It's just been too crazy. But I wanted to reiterate something huge that happened last week. So we had intelligence, layoff.com. Let me set the stage. We had intelligence, layoff.com. Sneed reported on it. Something big was happening. We didn't believe it. The community didn't really believe it. It seemed way too crazy.
Big.
It was no way. There was no. We thought it was fake. Yeah. And then, prior to the UBS conference, it rolls around that it was true that Ericsson gave AT&T a sweetheart deal. Sweetheart deal to the point where now we're finding out after more weeks, more days, that this thing is bigger than we thought. CommScope is out. Fujitsu is in. Ericsson was the headline, but Fujitsu was the secondary headline. We got people saying that, in order for this thing to be happening, you have to start now. Every cell site has to be, there's so many different things. So let's start off with the big headline and then let's disseminate from there. Ericsson is now the de facto king of North America in terms of an OEM standpoint. We need to talk about this. So,
with
Chacha, how do you want to do this?
I think Nokia's got problems, and I don't know how much of that is self-inflicted and all that. That's arguable, but I mean, when they lost the Verizon contract, that was huge. I mean, I was worried then because each major vendor in the US, so Nokia and Ericsson, was represented at each carrier. So when Verizon moved away from Nokia, I called that trouble. And then I started to see the Project Excalibur, moving to Ericsson from Nokia for T-Mobile. I'm like, well, this is a problem. And then the Nokia gear that was going up on AT&T sites required fans because of overheating. Moose, the move actually makes sense. AT&T was looking for something more reliable, probably more cost-effective, and something they could scale better. There was clearly something wrong at Nokia because the same thing happened at Verizon.
By the way, before Sneed mentioned something that I think hasn't really been reported as many times. I think that this has been started since the Verizon move. Since Verizon got rid of Nokia, this has been an inevitable fate.
Crazy.
That Nokia was going to be going away from the top two carriers. Anyways, go ahead, continue. This is the topic of one of them that I wanted to discuss, but go ahead.
So basically,
can I get my take real quick?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
So, with further context, the partnership with Fujitsu, the involvement of other manufacturers and other sources of material, this makes more sense, and I can understand why it happened the way it did. When this was originally rumored and people were talking about it, I didn't agree with it at all. Because, if we're talking about exclusivity with Ericsson has notoriously not been supportive of ORAN. Now we're talking about Ericsson now supporting ORAN and partnering with vendors in the space. That's huge because that's going to extend ORAN support to the other carriers.
But there was one snag, EM, with ORAN and Ericsson. Do you know what it is?
No, go ahead.
It's front haul related. It's massive MIMO and front haul related. So they had to develop a split solution for that problem. And I'm talking about a problem that existed in May. So something must have changed between May and now.
What do you mean front haul related? What was the issue with front haul?
Some kind of a limitation in front haul with respect to hardware when it comes to Open RAN.
Okay.
I have to go back and look at the technicals, but that was mentioned in the article when, Ericsson was asked about their resistance and their unwillingness to kind of comply with ORAN. They said it just wasn't good enough. They said based in compliance, there's a massive MIMO deficiency and then there's a front haul deficiency. They, I think, have provided some kind of a solution. Now AT&T feels comfortable moving forward with them as their builder, as their programmer, as their vendor. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. But my point was that there's other companies involved. It's not just Ericsson, because that changes the conversation. We're talking about Ericsson now developing technologies that will be able to be implemented globally and within other carriers in the US. And that changes the narrative about Ericsson as a company. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, those were the two things that they mentioned they had a resistance to. Front haul, something about the front haul and the massive MIMO piece, which is true, right? You're getting more spectral efficiency and better capacity and throughput with higher order MIMO, which technically Open RAN doesn't achieve. I think the standard for Open RAN is what, AT8R?
I think that's the That's the minimum standard, yeah.
That's not going to cut it. These guys are doing fixed wireless access. You know, the tower spacing's getting tighter.
So basically, as usual, the industry moves as Verizon does. As soon as Verizon
Crazy.
makes a move away from Nokia, it's just like seeing dominoes fall. Eventually, the entire industry moves right along with them. Somebody tell me I'm wrong. Because Sneed and Moose literally just said it. We just said it.
Well, they moved away from Nokia almost 3 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, this is not new. I mean, whenever Verizon does something, they work the kinks out or whatever, or they're the ones that are bold to do it first.
Yeah,
and then the other two guys.
Stinky did something unique, B.
Which is?
He's getting Ericsson to front a lot of the rebuild and the future proofing of the network.
But rebuild what? I thought AT&T's network was already pretty modern. So rebuild.
There's going to be a reconstruction of tower sites. There are going to be changes at these tower sites to make them O-RAN compliant. 70% of the network will be running over O-RAN by 2026.
So they're changing out radios and antennas. That's not necessarily a modernization. I mean, I guess you can call it a rebuild, but they're just swapping out antennas and radios.
I don't think it's just going to be antennas and radios.
Yeah.
I think there's more to it.
And basebands. I mean, what else?
Right.
So
it's going to require new cell site routers too.
Yeah, so routers. So Fujitsu is going to give them new routers. So they're going to have a rebuild of a site that's going to get them what? From a performance standpoint, maybe a pathway to O-RAN. So I guess that opens up O-RAN for the rest of the industry because everybody uses Ericsson. Okay, congratulations.
It's more about scalability, right? It's about efficiencies and cost. I don't really see this about being better for the consumer. I don't think it changes that much. I think it's the business model, right? I think it's Open RAN allows them to scale better, get more bang for their buck. It's efficiencies.
So help me understand. Ericsson is conceding now that O-RAN is a thing, and they're going to build solutions that will provide a pathway to Open RAN for AT&T's network. That's
AT&T kind of the facilitator of it, right? Yeah.
So just to clarify, the things that are being upgraded are the following: the antennas, the rack potentially needs to be upgraded to support the Ericsson gear if it's heavier than the Nokia gear that is currently there. So that means that it has to go through a complete basically, imagine if you're doing a complete rip and replace, you have to go through the entire A to Z with the county, with the city that approves the permit. Okay.
You got to do surveys and everything.
Right. And you have to check if the pole is will hold that new weight. If it's heavier than Nokia, just hypothetically speaking, right? But here's the other thing that, Sneed has been getting some intel on. He's been getting intel that all Nokia projects that were currently in flight,
they're done.
They're done as of March.
Nothing new is going up, right?
Right, as of March. So because remember, the permit cycle is a significant amount of time, just in case if there's equipment delays, weather delays, situations that are unforeseeable, right? The permit allows that extension of that time to upgrade or new site build, right? So as of March, it's done.
Okay. So AT&T, whose network was already behind schedule with respect to C-band and DoD expansion, is now having to rebuild the network that they just spent X amount of time building. And the only positive that I've heard is a pathway to O-RAN, but not necessarily any improvements in network performance.
Ericsson's coming out of pocket $10 billion. They're going to be. They're literally going to be modernizing the T-Mobile, the AT&T network. Be like sites that haven't been upgraded now get upgraded. Sites that have been upgraded also get modified as well.
So when you say modernized, is it modernized or just they're going to be swapped out?
ORAN modernized, right?
So is that okay?
They're not doing. AT&T's not doing the work. This is all on Ericsson.
And that's fine. So I understand they're going to save money in that way, but their network was already very modernized. So they're moving from one vendor to another, and so far the only thing that I have heard as an improvement is just a pathway to ORAN. So that's
a networking philosophy though, B. That's huge. That's not something to be like minimized.
At what cost though, Sneed? Because they were already not just finances, but also performance. They were already behind on their network build.
I agree.
This isn't going to speed up their network build. If anything, it's going to make it even slower.
Yeah, but it distinguishes them in a way. If you think about it, like they're now going to have the most efficient network in the industry.
Maybe
the only exception I would say is probably the vRAN portion of the Verizon network.
Yeah, I was about to say, because I mean, there's a whole lot
that might be. Yeah, I think that one might be more efficient because it's already up and running on 1/3 of their network. Right.
There's nothing more efficient than vRAN.
Yeah, vRAN.
I mean, from the standpoint of power, from the space. I mean,
agreed.
Steve, I'm just not impressed, man. I'm sorry, I'm not impressed. AT&T just seems to be behind.
Well, the reason I'm impressed is because John Stankey is literally getting everybody to do everything for him. He hasn't done anything. I mean, he even has a joint venture in fiber. He got FirstNet. He got the joint venture with fiber and they're building their own fiber. And
but it's not theirs.
Now.
They don't own it.
He's got this now.
It's not theirs. They don't own it. They're part owners of that fiber.
But he's got everybody doing everything for him.
That's so what those need like that.
That's not a good thing.
That's not a good thing. That's another point of failure.
You guys can say what you want. I'm talking about a guy who has been in third, lost second place in subscribers and postpaid, a complete debacle due to Warner Media. I mean, they are trying to recover a 10-year setback possibly. And I think he's playing all his cards right with respect to the business ops. There's the other versions of this where he does it differently, place them back further, just so you know. Don't tell me I'm wrong, because I'm not. Other ways of doing this leaves him further back, and that's the truth.
Other ways of doing it, I mean, the suggestion that I was going to say was continue the build that you already have because you're already behind.
Stay last and stay far back.
But this doesn't help. This doesn't propel them to first place. This makes their build last even longer now.
And
because the work and the money that they've already invested to get where they are now,
they've been laying off all that down. They've been laying off tens of thousands of people for several months now. That's not going to stop. This is going to accelerate that. He's restructuring the entire business.
But is that a good thing?
It's not about it being a good thing. He's doing everything that the investor wants him to do. Stanky is a slave to the investor, more so than any other CEO. Every move he has made has been about efficiencies. He's hitting on everything with respect to efficiencies. Whether it's right or wrong, good for people or not, it's not the argument.
But there's an argument to be had whether this is an efficiency move or not. So
it is 100%
you're talking about ripping and replacing all of the existing Nokia gear that you've already spent billions of dollars putting up.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, you're subcontracting Ericsson to then deploy some sort of open RAN solution for a set amount of dollars.
Yeah.
And when that's not their expertise. The reason carriers subcontract Ericsson specifically and their employees is because they're the best at what they do with their proprietary equipment and their software. That's why carriers pay Ericsson.
So then why did they bring in Fujitsu?
That's what I'm saying.
You're talking Ericsson doesn't make good routers, I guess. I don't know.
You're talking about bringing in a company that's then going to have to learn and grow with this new product segment that they're not used to and that they've been bullish on for years. There's a lot of downsides to this move that nobody really wants to talk about.
on a commercial network that's serving customers to this day.
But the downsides are out. They're overshadowed by the cost efficiencies that are come with this over the long term. Like by 2026, right? We got that magical number from John Stanky, right? He said the more data traffic runs over this O-RAN network, the more efficient it is. Cost, right? Cost of operation. That's why I described it as a philosophy. That's why I made the video about O-RAN. You had people doing coverage on this move, totally misunderstanding. This is an O-RAN story. This is not even really about Ericsson. It's really not. Ericsson's just part of the workforce. Ericsson's part of the intellect. They're part of the skilled. This is an O-RAN story. This is huge for O-RAN. This bus opened the door for O-RAN in North America. Like, it wasn't like Dish was the first to do it, but they're not the size network of AT&T or servicing, how many, what is it, petabytes of data annually? You see what I'm saying? It's the scale of this. That's what it is.
Yeah, but that doesn't negate it from the growing pains and the potential. There's a lot of question marks in this whole thing.
Yeah, but what's not a question mark is the efficiency. The rest of it can be question marks, not the efficiency.
Okay, so what's efficient about building out another network that you just got finished halfway doing right now as we speak? How is that efficient, Sneed?
I'm not sure I understand. You're implying that they did all that work for nothing?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I'm saying that they've been building a 5G network for X amount of time that they were already behind on. Third place in the deployment of midband. Now they're having to rip all that down and replace it. And the only benefit I've heard you talk about is a pathway to O-RAN. That's
because the O-RAN is the philosophy of their future network. That's not a small thing.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's small, but at what cost? What's the cost benefit analysis? So you're saving on the cost of actually doing the work, and that's great. But you already paid to build the network to where it is now.
That's not even where the savings are coming from. It's down the line in the efficiency of the operations.
That's
they do the cost analysis. I don't have access to any of that intel.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, but we're talking about it as far as theoretically, Sneed. And I don't see where this is going to allow them to be able to sell themselves in a way that's competitive enough to allow them to gain any additional market share over their competitors.
It's not. This is not about market share. This is not about market share.
So it's about cost savings, right? So
this is 100. This is 100% about efficiencies because that is O-RAN. That is the whole concept.
So what you're saying is they're going to be able to operate their network once all this is done. 2026 is what you say. They're going to be able to operate
70% of the network will be over their O-RAN.
Okay, so not all of it, just 70%. So that means let's say 2028. So in 2028, they'll be able to say we're able to do what we do for less than what Verizon and NT-Mobile are able to do what they do.
I don't know. Maybe.
Lord, please allow me to be alive long enough to see that day. Amen. Because I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Let me jump in on 2 points here. So we got Pascal. So this is disseminating down, right? And I apologize. I got a phone call. That's why it dropped for a second. Pascal just yesterday went on record and he said, quote, "We are going to do 21 billion in Capex next year," which we already know is going to be more than 50% fiber related. However, that's still more than T-Mobile is doing in the wireless. And if the reports are true, this sweetheart deal enables AT&T to spend less money and gain more from the benefit.
Yeah, because they're pawning off their 5G network development on another company because they don't want to do it.
Well,
which is unfortunate.
Can I chime in as the AT&T boy?
Go ahead.
I'm gonna be honest. I said this before, and Steve looked at me sideways, but I'm a little skeptical of this move. Personally, I haven't had any problems with the Nokia gear in my market. I've had very good experience. And whenever you do changes, especially when it's this amount of changes all in unison, as was being touched on by some of the people on the panel with outsourcing of the actual network engineering and deployment, when you're introducing products and solutions that are outside of that like walled garden of Ericsson's gear, you're introducing a lot of risks when it comes to compatibility. Ericsson is like the Apple of like networking gear. They were very anti-open RAN. Like even right now, their open RAN that they're deciding or opting to support is very restrictive to say the least.
Guys, I did the homework on that. I literally addressed the two things they had concerns about. I did the research on it. It's front haul related and it's massive MIMO related.
And what was the result of the research? Like
they have a solution for both of those deficiencies now.
All right, we'll deploy it. Let's see what happens.
Right, exactly.
But until then, I'm not convinced that this particular move is going to allow them to save so much in Capex, OpEx dollars that all of a sudden they're going to be able to lower prices to the point where, it's going to be industry leading or change it. No, I'm not buying it. I am not buying it. I'm not buying it.
I'm also just going to continue on just to finish my thought. I also just want to continue on to say that while I do think that there is benefit for AT&T in doing this in the short term, in the long term, I feel like it's very risky to have so much of your eggs in one basket. Like who's to say like 5, 6, 7 years down the line that there isn't some new need with some new 5G spec and that Ericsson isn't like behind in supporting that new need or requirement, and maybe Nokia or some other vendor ends up being the one that ends up.
Nokia can come back in. It's ORAN.
I don't think Ericsson's is plug and play though. Like
it's
ORAN brings up a good point. They're also losing control over what can be deployed and when.
They've given it all. I'm sorry, Ian. Go ahead. I apologize.
No, you were about to say exactly what I was going to say. They've handed the keys to Ericsson and said, "Here, you drive the bus." Like,
not to mention their core. They don't even manage their core anymore. They've outsourced all of it. You guys think this is a good thing? I mean, hey, if you guys want to do that, that's fine. I ain't switching to AT&T.
I didn't say it was a good thing. I strictly spoke about it from the efficiency standpoint and cost. That was it.
I think cost-wise, Sneed is right. I think as far as whether or not it's a good thing or not, the future will tell. And I don't have a no on that. I just know that I'm a little apprehensive because
you know what this sounds like, man. Dennis, tell me if you agree with this. Hear me out on this, bro. A person buys a car and you don't approve because it's not a Toyota, and you know that Toyotas are the best cars. The person bought a Hyundai and you go, why would you do that? Why didn't you buy a Toyota? You should have bought a Toyota. You shouldn't have bought a Hyundai. Oh, well, the Hyundai was on sale, so I got it for $4,000 less. So I saved money. Oh, no, that was stupid. See, this is the type of argument it is. Their only concern is cost, operations, flexibility, scalability. The concept is ORAN. That is all this is about.
I'm just my place on it though is I'm just a little apprehensive because I know in my market
Nokia failed them.
AT&T's got a good thing going on, and they use Nokia gear. Like
Nokia failed them, Dennis. They were putting fans on their antennas and radios.
So then why not seek out a partner like Samsung that has proven time and time again that they can keep up with Ericsson?
Great question.
And that's
they
have a contract with Samsung. I don't know.
And by the way, keep in mind this too, guys, because everybody's going to bring this up about Samsung. It seems like I have been once again vindicated. It did go to RFP. And what I mean by that is that earlier this year, they requested a proposal, okay, from all the OEMs asking them, can you do this? And only Ericsson said, yes, I will do that. And by the way, if you were to give me everything, I'm going to not only help pay now that we're finding out, pay for your entire rip and replace, but it was too obvious to me. It was like, wow, Ericsson had to give them everything in order to get this done.
So they got AT&T got Ericsson by the balls based on circumstance.
Yes.
Also, Ericsson's like financially, this was like needed for them. Have you
Yeah.
looked at their stock price?
Yeah, this saved the bag, bro.
I mean,
it's-
the only good thing about this,
Yeah.
the only good thing is that it is now going to force a vendor that has not been open to ORAN. It now forces them to do it, which is going to benefit T-Mobile and Verizon at zero cost. To be honest with you guys.
Verizon wins on this emphatically for the reasoning, of course, the EM just talked about, but they've also got the Samsung deal. Samsung is hard at work deploying vRAN in their network as well. I mean, Verizon wins on this more than AT&T does. They're going to be the test bed for whatever screw ups happen on the network, and then the product that Verizon finally will get access to will have the kinks worked out at AT&T's expense. I don't understand.
I don't really see like a monster benefit to Verizon in this. I mean, they're obviously indirectly going to benefit from it, but I don't.
If an ORAN product, if an ORAN product from Ericsson is going to be what comes of this for the industry, I assume everybody will have access to that product.
But Verizon steered away from ORAN.
But for the reasons that you just said, there were things that they didn't have, like they didn't offer. Russo said in his latest, I think it was Wells Fargo, in that particular conference, that, for example, it didn't have the MIMO capabilities that Verizon was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
If you're saying that Ericsson has a solution for that now, they're going to test that on AT&T's commercial network. And then based on the results of that performance, I'm sure Verizon will then say, "Hey, sure, yeah, I'll buy it."
So then, why are you asking questions like, "How does this help AT&T?"
Because I want to know how it helps AT&T.
But you just answered your own questions, bro. What's real?
No, I didn't answer my own question. I just talked about how it helps Verizon, this whole thing. But how does this? And it helps T-Mobile as well. But how does it help AT&T?
Yeah, the efficiency. You lose me at the efficiency part because, as Moose is talking about, you're talking about site surveys, you're talking about structural analysis, you're talking about full-blown rip and replaces on all these Nokia sites that are probably pretty old. Like, there's a lot of money that goes into that.
I gotta ask you, what company as big as AT&T would do this without it being long-term cost-effective and efficient?
I'm not. I understand.
You get what I'm saying? Like, that's my approach. I'm looking at it like I'm not smarter than those guys. So like financially, from an efficiency, from the operations, from the vendor flexibility, the scalability, it all in principle, in theory, makes sense to me.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it saves the money in the short term, but over the long term,
no, that's where the efficiency is long term. It's not short term. This is not a short term solution. In the short term, it's a pain. It's growing pain.
So the only benefit they get out of this is that they get to save money on the network, on the network performance, pretty much what you're saying.
Well, they had network performance problems related to Nokia, so they addressed that.
Where was that showing up? Because we've talked about for months how AT&T had a very modernized network. You've reported that more than once, Sneed. So
yeah, I know, but they're also they're still the poorest performer when it comes to throughput and capacity, and they also have reports of Nokia gear failing and overheating. So
I thought that was because they were like last in the build out of 5G midband.
Bro, radios failing has nothing to do with being last in the build out.
Well, I mean, radios fail on Ericsson and on Samsung as well. So everybody has that issue.
Yeah, but they were having to put up fans up in the towers. Like, that makes things complicated with leases and weight.
Didn't Verizon have to do something similar with some of the early Samsung panels?
I mean, I'm sure they did. I'm sure they had the same thing with Ericsson. I mean, those types of situations happen. So I understand and I respect that. But what I'm asking is, I don't understand.
Look, if there's 10 things, if there's 10 reasons that this happened, like 8 of them were so major for AT&T, they felt compelled to do this. The 2 things that are down, they literally said, we're cool with those trade-offs. The one which we've discussed, right? We talked about, losing power, right? Not being able to pin your vendors up against each other for pricing. I think that stuff is legit. I think in principle, you have to operate that way. But I think they felt compelled to do it because of the cost. I think they felt compelled to do it because of Ericsson providing more reliable radio gear. Like the benefits outweighed, the drawbacks, if you will.
Hey, Sneed, real quick though, slightly off kilter of Ericsson specifically, but the Fujitsu part of this, I'm not super familiar with Fujitsu outside of Dish using them.
So that's where all this comes together. The whole concept of Fujitsu coming into fold comes from Charlie Ergen and Dish. That was the proof of concept that AT&T was waiting for. You definitely have to think that there were conversations between Stanky and Ergen behind closed doors when they were, doing their wheeling and dealing for network access. How's that 5G network going? That standalone 5G network. Charlie's telling him, what are you guys doing for radio gear? Who's your vendor? He told him, the cheapest, most cost-effective way is Fujitsu. And this is why I keep telling you guys, this is about Open RAN, and this is about cost and efficiency. Fujitsu is the name that can provide you with the most cost-effective solutions for Open RAN radio gear. It's them, right? And that's why they're involved. And this is bigger for Fujitsu than anyone else. It's bigger than how impactful it is for Ericsson. Fujitsu's a small name. Now they're in 2 companies in North America. 2 different companies with respect to radios.
I agree they're a small name, but I wanted to ask, who's Fujitsu's main competitor?
Anybody who makes radios.
Are they leading in performance in any way? Aside from
they're the most cost-effective solution, and they're ORAN compliant.
So is Fujitsu supplying them with radios, or are they supplying them with routers?
I don't know about routers, but for sure radios.
Okay.
Because it's going to be the same radio technologies we've been seeing going up for Dish.
So
I'm sure they have a more modern solution or whatever. They have new.
You're scaring me when you're talking about Dish because of how bad they are in my market. You're scaring me. But continue.
So Ericsson's not even providing all the radios for this build out?
I don't know. It looks like Ericsson makes Fujitsu radios. And there might be some patents involved. I don't know.
Well, thank you, Los. I appreciate you educating us on that.
That's the thing. There's a partnership here. I don't think this works without Fujitsu. I don't think Ericsson can facilitate this ORAN thing without Fujitsu.
Especially if Ericsson makes Fujitsu. I didn't know that. So, like I said, I appreciate you, Los, for letting us know. But this is a weird setup. I'm skeptical. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know everything, but I'm laughing in the corner. I'll say that. I'm snickering in the corner.
All I'm hoping is that AT&T doesn't do a repeat of 5G Plus and doesn't do a T-Mobile on me. Because Sneed, you remember when 5G Plus first hit from AT&T in my market? I complained about how bad it was. It was worse than the LTE. You remember that,
bro? You don't remember LTE when it was first launched? Do you remember HSPA when it first launched?
Oh, I remember HSPA Plus. That was fire. HSPA Plus was fire.
But there's growing pains, dude. You got phones getting hot. You got signal being weak. There's new technologies, man.
I know. I just don't want to have worse service for months on
end.
Bro,
do you know my first speed test on N41, what I got?
No, what'd you get?
180 megabits per second on 60 megahertz of bandwidth. And I was a quarter mile away from the site. And I drove away. I was a half mile away and it disconnected. It's early, bro. It's hard to call it. You got to just wait and let stuff get better.
I know. It's just, I don't want to be worse off than what I am because it's really good right
in the long term, the performance should only improve because, Nokia just wasn't cutting it. Come on, man. Why would they downgrade their network?
Cost. You just said it. Cost.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Why would you downgrade your network? Just you cut off your nose to spite your face? No, it's got to do both. It's got to do both. Nokia was trash. They're upgrading their network by moving away from Nokia. You guys got to understand, out of the 10 things accomplished here, 8 of them were things they had to have, and they just punted the other 2 things. They're getting better radio gear. They're getting more efficient operations, and they're winning the cost battle. That was everything to them, even if it means they lose power, they're stuck with one vendor, and all the, the 2 negative things that you guys came up with.
Well, I'll wait and see what happens. I'm just happy to say I have a line with everyone. B, tell Verizon to give me more chicken in my market, please and thank you. I need some.
They ain't gonna listen to me. Why you asking me to tell them? They ain't gonna listen to me. I'm just a guy.
Because you're the no chicken guy. If you change your tune to giving more chicken, they'll listen. You're the only one with no chicken on this panel.
No, we're all no. Wait, what am I? I'm giving out less chicken. B's no chicken. Okay, EM is the CEO of more chicken.
Yeah, sorry, we went out. So I want to talk. Blind G Tech asked the difference between ORAN and vRAN. So vRAN is just the virtualization of the baseband software, so they can use off-the-shelf hardware at the cell site. Whereas in traditional RAN, you have like proprietary basebands, Ericsson proprietary basebands. ORAN, but with vRAN, you still have proprietary network elements beyond that, right? Like your 64T panels from Samsung, or Fujitsu has a 64T panel. Those are all proprietary. ORAN is a universal standard for all that stuff, but like Joe Russo talked about when he talked about ORAN, there's not a good solution to anything beside 8T for ORAN. So right now, vRAN would be the better solution until ORAN sees more maturity.
They literally have to upgrade the standard for MIMO, you know, and that would be huge. I think more people get on board with ORAN.
I think the majority of the industry is on board with ORAN. It just needs features. It needs to have features that, you know, that the industry wants to deploy to customers. And I think that the MIMO technology that Russo was talking about is one of those features. So again, if Ericsson has that available, then AT&T will be the guinea pig for whether that works as well as it's supposed to. And based on that performance, we'll find out if T-Mobile and Verizon say, okay, Ericsson will buy that. But I mean, more power to AT&T if they're able to save some money. I mean, that's cool. But if it doesn't help them with their performance, and it doesn't also help them with their rollout as far as the speed of their rollout, then I'm not sure if the money is really going to benefit from as far as the cost savings is concerned. I'm not sure if that's going to benefit their company overall in the long term if they're already the third or the smallest MNO in America from a subscriber standpoint. I mean, they're trying to get back into second place.
Well, that's probably why this was a big move, right? B, why they had to go ORAN so soon, right? To, you know,
yes,
to get more efficient.
I hear you, and it makes sense if the efficiency also led to improved performance and also the speeding up of their rollout. But this seems like it's going to slow down the rollout and not get them any better actual performance. Maybe they'll get improvements from the MIMO and all that kind of thing. Maybe that's what they're hoping for. And to that point, I hope that happens as well, because that'll benefit the entire industry for everything I just said before. But I mean, this seems like a lot to get that sort of return. I mean, they were already behind. Sneed, they got to rip all the stuff down they've been building for the last X amount of years or X amount of months.
Yeah, but they're not gonna have to pay for it. They just
That's
have to
true.
pay.
That's true.
You know.
But time is money, and they're already behind on the mid-band build as is.
Yeah, but think about it like this: behind to whose calculation?
America's, everybody, the industry.
No. See, that's the problem, is that everybody's putting this like fake goalpost that you have to hit. You know, it's like, let's be realistic here. Whose goalpost is realistically AT&T batting their drum to?
The customers.
Their own.
The
Their
customer is the
strategy
one.
is not,
What?
I need to put as many C-band sites as possible because I don't. The FWA thing is not their primary mission. What's their primary mission in 2024 and beyond? What did Pascal just say and Stanky just say in the last week? We are going to increase our fiber build by 15 million homes to now, instead of 30 million by 2025, they're going to be doing 45 million by 2027 or 8. I forgot what the exact date, but think about it, guys. The mission is fiber.
But
so what you're telling me is that AT&T is scared of fixed wireless because almost 70% of their customers are considering dropping that DSL?
No, it's not that. It's that we have customers like Verizon, like T-Mobile, that are paying for these 10 gig or more upgrades, eventually 100 gig, because it's only going from 10 gig to 100 gig. That's the exact way it's going. Okay. We have customers like T-Mobile that are paying these 10 gig upgrades, right? It behooves you, if you are the provider of that said service and you have a contract with with T-Mobile, to upgrade as quickly as humanly possible your customer. Why? Because if you are co-located with your customer, you can then upgrade your own cell site in the back end for cheaper.
Well, Verizon's doing the same thing. They've been doing one fiber for like 7 years. So that customer that AT&T has in Verizon, that account's getting smaller by the day.
Yes.
Yeah,
But also
there's an argument to be had there, Moose. But from what I've seen personally, and I'm just talking about the major metros that I've visited, the major metros where T-Mobile and Verizon would need 10 gig fiber, that one fiber's already there. Like in rural, sure, but a lot of places AT&T's not the ILEC in rural. They're not the one bringing the fiber to the sites anyways. They might in the future, but
I think we're talking about a very small amount of sites, right? We're like the main sites that I'm talking about that are going to need this 10 gig band upgrade are those sites that have a significant amount of utilization, right?
Fiber to the prim is by and large the very best technology money can buy, and I certainly support AT&T rolling out their product, deploying it, making it bigger, all that kind of stuff. But the take rate, like the conversion rate of those customers, leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
So if that's your method, if that's your strategy for growth going forward, is that really a winning strategy?
If the,
Like
if the penetration
AT&T,
if the penetration rate was closer to 50%, you wouldn't be saying that.
but it's not, Sneed.
Right.
It's not.
Right.
So with that being said, is that a winning strategy? It just seems like AT&T is behind the 8 ball and slow to move on everything. Internet Air, after denying for X amount of time that fixed wireless was really even a thing. Now all of a sudden they want to deploy it. Oh well, no, we're gonna go back and rebuild our entire network. Oh, we're gonna. I mean, it's just.
well, and I want to add on to what you're saying.
I mean, it's sloppy, guys. Y'all don't think this is sloppy?
No, it is, and I'll tell you why. So the FWA is so important to AT&T right now because they're actively decomming their entire DSL network, and they need their customers to go somewhere temporarily if they're going to overbuild with fiber. I still have very little faith in AT&T to overbuild a lot of places because historically they sucked at doing that.
Okay, so when Stanky said 2 years you get fiber, you don't believe him.
No, I think he's full of shit. But so they want to decom the DSL, right? So then they throw a band-aid on top of that by offering their customers the FWA, which is a band-aid for them to get fiber to the customer. Like they're playing from behind and then trying to act like they're doing the best thing since sliced bread.
And they're not. They did the same thing with Gigapower when Verizon already implemented a one fiber product that they actually own. That's not some 50-50 deal with BlackRock where 50% of their fiber network is going to be owned by a bank.
Yeah, but AT&T they're still building their own fiber. Like that's
true,
not
but they're not gonna own it.
And why are we hitting on the BlackRock deal? The BlackRock deal was honestly, it was one of the best moves that any telco company could do.
I thought it was a good move, man.
Yeah,
it was a good move. It wasn't a great move because they're not gonna own their network.
And it's going to be open access. It's going to be open to everyone.
and BlackRock's going to be partial owner. That's the reason why it's not a great deal. The One Fiber initiative, in comparison, is owned by Verizon, so it's their fiber. They don't have to ship.
You've heard my principle when it comes to fiber, B. I am a firm believer that it makes a lot more sense with things like that. That it should just be one owner, i.e., government. Actually, in my opinion. And then open access for anybody that wants to lease off it. AT&T just did it the privatized capitalistic way with BlackRock Fund Bucks to help fund getting it into the place that they care about. And while they won't necessarily own it, they will have access to it in the places that they need it at a much cheaper cost than if they did it themselves. And they're getting that.
T-Mobile might be one of their customers.
Yeah.
I mean, the other
T-Mobile
thing to
customer
remember
everybody.
too
Oh, yeah,
is
true.
that the BlackRock Gigapower stuff, it's not going to be residential. It has nothing to do with residential. This is going to be enterprise. It's going to be long haul.
To somebody's, it'll be residential.
I doubt it, Sneed.
Somebody will sell it as residential.
But then they're gonna.
I hear
So
what
you're saying what, like 95% of it will be enterprise?
I think this is going to be enterprise and long haul. That's what I genuinely believe that, because at the end of the day, those are going to be the big dollar customers that
Some of the
BlackRock is going to want to chase.
Right. Some of the quotes from early in the joint venture was AT&T was looking to coordinate a way to increase bundle penetration. So to me, that sounds like they were going to be using the fiber to sell their brand over that fiber, similar to what, like, you know, T-Mobile does with T-Fiber in those like 5 places or whatever. So you get what I'm saying? But like I see more than one application to it. I don't just look at it as long haul or enterprise only. I think there will be fiber to premise. It just won't be branded. It's going to be resold, right? Like leased access or whatever.
Hey, Sneed, I got a quick question for you, man, to change up gears a little bit. We talked a lot tonight about AT&T. We talked a lot tonight about T-Mobile. We talked a lot tonight about Verizon. But we haven't talked anything at all about Dish.
Ooh.
Why?
Oof.
Why?
Ooh.
They're irrelevant.
I just want to ask you, as this year winds down to an end and we turn into 2025, what do you think happens? Like, will this be the year for Dish, or who's 2025? Whose year is it? Like, who's taking this year?
Well, the problem with Dish is they have no liquidity, right? So their outlook is bleak. You know, getting money, borrowing money at current rates, you know, that's what's been hard for Dish. You know, people have been clamoring for them to sell assets to stay viable. And if they sell assets, they put themselves in a bad position. You know, everybody's calling for their bankruptcy. Everybody thinks they're going to sell out. Somebody buy them. There's a lot of negative sentiment towards Dish, and it's warranted. You haven't seen upside. You haven't said, wow, that's impressive. You know, they still haven't really shaken up the game in any type of retail presence. There's no signal or signs for anybody to change their mind about Dish. So if anything is going to happen at Dish from a positive standpoint, number one, they got to stop getting in their own way. Number two, they need to stop purging customers in prepaid, right? They need to add customers in postpaid. Yeah, they got device support through the iPhone 15. Why the hell don't we have support for the iPhone 14? People are going to have those phones for another 2-3 years. And they might want to put a Dish SIM on their phone, and they can't because it's an eSIM only phone, right? And it doesn't support voice over NR. So what the hell's the solution? Can you run 2 simultaneous eSIMs so you can achieve voice over LTE calling? And it's just all wrong. They're being tasked with the impossible. I've come to the conclusion it's just so hard to overcome. And then you had other carriers also trying to stomp you out in T-Mobile, right? They're literally trying to do the impossible, bro. And they don't even have, like, the good leaders have left. Like, they have a revolving door in leadership. Where's the stability? Do you see what I'm saying, Dennis?
No, I do. I'm pretty pessimistic on Dish. I just didn't know if maybe because you were the optimistic guy.
I love the network. I think what they did with the network is incredible. I think it was a miracle how they did this. Everything else is atrocity. The retail is a travesty.
Okay.
The way they treated customers, how they treat dealers, horrible. So when it comes to like business operations, trash. When it comes to the network, it was a miracle what they did.
Okay, and then the second part of my question, whose year is it going to be in 2024? Who's taking the year? Is this the year of Verizon? Is this the year of AT&T? Who's taking the year away?
Well, I mean, they all have projects going on, but I think it's going to be a huge year for Verizon. I think you're going to continue to see 400,000 net adds of home broadband subscribers. I think you're going to see, you know, the network continue to improve, just get better with scale. You know, I think the 10 gig fiber circuit dedication will manifest itself. I think the C-band will be the star of the show with respect to the network. I think we start seeing a little bit millimeter wave getting built in urban, regardless of what people think about C-RAN. I think there's some need for it. So, and I don't see T-Mobile doing much of it, with them relaxing Capex and then not having an existing footprint of C-RAN, and AT&T, like I said, they're in transition. There's work that's going to be done, a lot of work. So I think 2024 is poised to be a Verizon year. Now, I'm not saying that they're all of a sudden going to add 500,000 net ads and postpaid phone subs. They're just not that promotionally active like how AT&T is.
You stole the words out of my mouth. I was going to ask you if you thought they'd have postpaid ads.
They would literally have to be promotionally active like how they are in Q4s every quarter, which they don't do, right? So I think they'll be net positive for the year. I don't know. What are they at? 100,000, 150,000 for the year? If they added 200,000, I'd say it's a great year in postpaid phone net ads. I think fixed wireless access, I think they're going to add 2 million subs next year.
I would love to comment on this one, Dennis, if I can.
Go ahead.
So, with the economic situation continuing the way it is up until the election, I have a very strong feeling that it's going to continue being either T-Mobile led industry in terms of just the economics, right?
They're going to raise pricing, Moose.
Yes,
Economics?
they are gonna raise pricing, but consumers are not flocking to Verizon's postpaid service at this present time. And if the economics stay the same, they're not going to, right? So that's
What does
just
that mean?
because of the economy and the situation that it is, people are barely able to afford their current provider. Why are they going to switch to a more expensive provider?
Because all three carriers on postpaid are priced almost exactly the same. It's like a $20 difference between the three.
Then more than likely what's going to happen is they're going to go prepaid, right?
And who has the most prepaid coverage of all three carriers?
I don't know about coverage, but Verizon has some of the most prepaid brands with Visible, Mobile X.
Well, when I say coverage, not just the brands that they own, but the MVNOs that they do business with. Like Verizon's got the most prepaid coverage of all three carriers. So regardless of where the customer chooses to do business, chances are, like based on what we know, Verizon set themselves up to get some sort of revenue accretion from most of the customer base in the country. Whether people go to big cable, which did the majority of the growth in 2023, whether they go to one of the brands owned by Verizon. Well, I mean,
but that's assuming if big cable is going to continue having that subscriber. Because what we've seen in just the most recent headlines from the conferences is that Spectrum already said that they are having some major headwinds in growing their current broadband base, right?
Well,
so
yeah,
what does that
true.
signal? That signals to me that customers are disconnecting because they'd rather pay for an FWA solution, or they are doing a mobile hotspot for the bare minimum tasks, because that has been a trend.
And isn't Verizon growing to the tune of 400,000 plus fixed wireless ads every quarter?
Fixed wireless ads does not necessarily mean that they're going to get a postpaid account. And that's already been on record that they have a bad convergence strategy.
But fixed wireless is a postpaid account. Now, you can get it prepaid if you want, but that's a customer that they may or may not have already done business with.
Not a smartphone account is what I'm talking about.
But it's a new customer account. So now you have a relationship with the customer that you may or may not have had before, and now you can talk to them every 30 days because you have to bill them.
But again, I literally am going to repeat myself. They have been on record, Verizon, saying that they have a hard time doing a converged strategy. I don't foresee that changing.
When did they say that?
Oh my God, here we go. Look, I'm not going to reiterate.
Oh, I think you're talking about the 10% convergence, Moose.
There was somebody very recently in a very latest conference.
Sciatis, yeah.
And what did he say? That Verizon does not have a good convergence right now. When they have a fixed wireless customer, they do not immediately get that customer for wireless.
But that's not what he said. He didn't say that it was bad or anything. He just said that it was 10%. And that's what it is right now.
His exact words was he doesn't see the same convergence rate that others are seeing. That was his quote.
Okay, so at 400,000 ads, you don't think that there's going to be any improvement at all in that conversion rate as they
Absolutely
continue
not.
to add 400,000? Okay,
Absolutely
all
Really,
right.
Moose?
As they
Yes.
continue to add
Guys,
400,000
we're
every
talking
quarter.
about an economic situation that is very bleak right now.
Yeah, but the
Everywhere
bundling
you
saves
see,
money, Moose. So you
But
would
the
expect
bundling
it to.
saves money, and other
bundling does
companies.
not save money when the fact of the
That
matter
doesn't make
is that
any
your
sense.
wireless is the most expensive in the industry.
No, it's not. The most
It
expensive is
is.
T-Mobile now. They're the most expensive company. They have the most expensive plan.
With the
It's not
correct
Verizon.
promotions, especially the ones that they're running right now, T-Mobile is taking everything: lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Why?
That's not
Because you can get 4 lines with iPhones for what? $125 max?
4 lines and 4 iPhones is 125.
Yes, that's what I was hearing the latest.
with
So
trade-ins.
exactly. So clearly,
in the fourth quarter.
you guys are
So
clearly delusional to the
is that
situation of the economy.
so?
Seriously.
Is that promotion going to last forever? Is that one of their forever deals, or is that just for the fourth quarter? Because
Again,
if it's over in the first quarter
you're
or in the
fixated
second quarter,
on the
then
promotion.
you
You're
just brought up
fixated
the
on the
promotions. I didn't
promotion.
bring up the
That was an
promotion.
example of one thing that T-Mobile is doing to
So you're
get.
saying, Moose, that they're gonna have a big fourth quarter, right?
T-Mobile is going to have an incredible fourth quarter, but
Okay,
it's been like this because of the economic situation. That is the main headline here that you guys are completely ignoring.
For
I'm not
2024.
ignoring anything. I'm just saying that the question was in 2024, who's going to own the year? And you're talking about what's going on in the fourth quarter of 2023.
Look
Next
at the
year,
economic situation. Do you really
So
think that it's going to
he's
improve?
saying, so Moose, you're saying T-Mobile's gonna have a big year because they'll continue to be the value play for customers.
They'll continue
although
doing aggressive promotions. The
although they're
economic
not,
their economic situation of the customers is very bleak, so they'll continue staying with T-Mobile because they offer very flexible payment plans, right? The payment plans or whatever, like if, hey, I can't pay this month, no problem. T-Mobile won't
Arrangements.
disconnect them. Yeah, payment arrangements. They won't disconnect them. Other companies will definitely disconnect you. Verizon, AT&T will definitely disconnect you.
Verizon's
So
not disconnecting anybody after if they can't pay for 30 days. They're not
they
doing
will
that.
disconnect.
I
I
was gonna
have
For
say
been
both,
on.
30
both
days, for
AT&T
30
and
days,
Verizon offer like payment arrangements.
Yeah, they
yeah,
do
for
payment
30 days,
arrangements.
for 30 days. So if you're late one time for 30, they're going to disconnect.
They will eventually disconnect you.
Well,
But what I'm
eventually,
saying,
So
yes,
if
but not 30 days.
Verizon's and AT&T are really aggressive with it, if you don't pay your bill, like let's say your bill's due on the 30th of every month, you don't pay one bill, so then you've got technically 2 bills due now by the end of, or like the next month, they will suspend your service and then charge you reconnect fees. Both carriers
But
do
that's
that.
not. But that's not disconnection though. That's not
Okay,
disconnecting.
suspension. We're playing semantics here. Suspension, and
But
then
that's
they pay a reconnect fee
Ooh.
per line.
Oh.
all right. My bad. Continue. I
So
apologize.
that is something that in the industry that I think probably needs to be addressed. Like if a customer's financially struggling, why would you further put them in the red by charging them $20 a line to reconnect their service?
The
That's
reason
just
why the reason why is because the stakes have been raised. It's not just the cost of service anymore. It's the cost of service and the phone that the company also had to subsidize and is waiting for a payout over the course of 36 months. That's the reason why,
I
because the stakes
understand kind of.
have raised.
I understand. But when you're talking about an economic climate where people are watching their pocketbooks closer than ever, if a customer gets in a situation like, what if they just straight up disconnect? That like they just let their account go into the red and let it go to collections. That's going to happen more and more often as customers feel the financial pinch, and that's it's a very aggressive maneuver to avoid customers from not paying their bill, and I'm just not a fan of that personally.
So Moose, you're saying that's going to be an element to this.
it's already been an element this year to this.
So it just
But
gets worse next
it
year.
gets worse, correct?
Yeah.
Because that is the main thing that is being talked about at the highest levels. what's going to happen with all of these folks that are not able to pay. And I'll tell you this, the biggest worry right now is what happens when they are not. Okay, the thought has always been customers will always pay their phone. They'll pay everything. They won't pay anything other than their phone. For example, they won't pay their car. They won't pay their rent. They won't pay this, right?
They'll let all that stuff default,
Right.
but they'll
But they'll pay their phone.
right.
Now things have changed because we are now seeing examples on TikTok, Instagram, etc., where working class families, nursing, professionals have barely $200 left to spend. They're going to start cutting down. And I've already seen it. Top tier plans go to the very bottom plan. If that doesn't work out, they go to prepaid. If that doesn't work out, they just straight up reduce the amount of phones in their family. I've seen that as well.
Wow.
So
So you have a
clearly,
complete rearrangement of the cell phone account,
yes,
right?
that's what I'm telling you is happening right now in the industry. These are
The data doesn't
facts.
the data doesn't show that.
This is
Like
facts,
churn
B.
churn is churn is at
You
churn.
can't
So
refute the
so
facts.
show me the data to substantiate your facts, because
I can't
churn is at
show it to you
churn
publicly because
churn
that's
is at an all time low across the industry. Like churn's at an all time low. So like okay, so maybe there's some proprietary or secret data that you can't. I respect that, but based on the public data that we have and the statements that have been made public by the leaders of at least AT&T and Verizon, they've reported recently that they haven't seen, the wheels fall off and people just stop paying their bills like you're articulating right now. And that has been backed up by data quarter over quarter, sequentially and year over year. Like churn is normalizing and it's historically low. So I just want to understand where you're
Yeah,
getting
but
this
that's what he's
information.
saying. That's what Moose said. He said the churn's going to be low. They're not going to leave T-Mobile. They're going to stay there.
So, but I'm talking about across the industry. I'm not talking about one respective I'm talking about across the industry.
Yeah, but in an
We're
industry
seeing
with three providers, if there's churn, it's going to be substantial because there's going to be a lot of movement to one or two of them. Like one's going to be losing or two's going to be losing, and then they're all going to one or two, right?
I
And that
don't disagree. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I apologize. Go ahead.
no, I was just trying to bring clarity to that. That's essentially what Moose is saying. He's saying T-Mobile's in pole position to capture and keep financially troubled folks.
So why did their churn increase sequentially?
But they said that it was the best Q3 ever for churn.
Yet it still went up from second quarter to third quarter.
But it was their best Q3 churn ever.
Yeah, but historically their churn's always been high. So I know it's the best ever, but it still went up from second quarter this year to third quarter.
All right,
so
Moose,
they still had an increase.
Let me ask Moose. Moose, the Q3 where they had the .87 churn. I think Verizon was .90 and AT&T was low 8s.
Yeah.
Does the slight bump quarter over quarter churn for T-Mobile concern you? Do you think it's going to normalize, go back to lower numbers, or do you think it's going to spike? Because B's saying it's going to stay up. I don't know if I agree with that.
Well, the reason also you got to keep in mind this, right? Because T-Mobile is adding more customers than ever before, right? Just new accounts. There will be some more churn in the sense of, the higher they grow, that percentage also will slightly grow, right? But I will say this. T-Mobile, well, actually, I should say it more broadly. Any company has a different definition of churn. Okay? What do I mean by that? T-Mobile keeps your account. They don't close your account. If you can't pay, they just put it in a suspended status until you can pay. Okay? And the reason why I know that is because when I worked for
So that's not an
T-Mobile,
involuntary disconnect?
Exactly. You see where I'm getting at?
Yeah.
All of these churn numbers can be manipulated because an involuntary disconnect is essentially what Sneed is talking about is I can't pay for it. So thus the company is disconnecting me, AKA they're closing the account. A voluntary disconnect is I am choosing to port out or completely disconnect my line from my account, right? Now, obviously, a port out is what we traditionally think churn is, which means that people are rotating to different companies. But maybe as an industry, they only report churn as a port in or port out ratio, not a voluntary or involuntary disconnect. You got to also think about it like that.
How many might there be in a quarter, Moose, in terms of scale?
In terms of what I've
involuntary
seen,
disconnects,
yeah.
do you think it could be upwards of 50,000, 100,000?
Well, let's put it in terms of the percentage ratio or the dot ratio, okay? It could be anywhere from 0.1 to 0.4.
That's high.
Very.
Wow.
And that's not, I don't believe that's being reported in the numbers.
Interesting. Do you think all carriers don't count it or include it?
Well, I'll tell you this. There's no way that T-Mobile is reporting a port out of a free line. And I know that as a fact because in 2016, free lines were considered a win, and it's been reported on the financials for the Wall Street.
Net ads, right?
Right, the net ads, but it's not being reported as a disconnect. Do you see how the manipulation of the books?
So it doesn't hurt them; it only helps them.
Exactly.
Yeah, the existence of it is just a net ad under all circumstances.
And this is what company?
T-Mobile.
So what you're saying is that they're counting those free lines as net ads.
Yes.
And then when those lines churn, it's just free. It's just a wash because they were never making money from it in the first place.
Exactly. See how ridiculous this sounds?
Wow, that's crazy.
But then you go right back and say you expect their churn to normalize and or go down. How, man?
Yeah, based on the structure of how they do the ads, maybe he's got something there.
There's an argument to be had there based on their number, the way they report their own numbers, right? Yeah.
It's basically set up so they can't fail.
That's funny. I didn't know that. That changes.
Shout out to Dennis for coming on tonight. He had to bounce.
They're cooking, but not in a good way. More like cooking the
books.
Yeah, cooking the books and stuff, man.
I was gonna say they're cooking crack over there, bro.
It's ridiculous. I hate it.
Typical T-Mobile stuff, man. And you guys wonder why I am the way I am with that company.
Bro, they're the 5G GOAT. Chill out, bro.
See, Sneed? After what we just heard, are we still playing that game? After what we just heard? What else do we got to hear?
Bro, 5G UC stands for ultimate, man.
Oh, my God. All right.
5G UCD's nuts, bro.
I did want to do one last thing if we have like a couple minutes, Sneed.
Yeah, Moose.
So there was an article back in early December, first week of December, where they were talking about the public safety spectrum of 4.9 gigahertz, right?
Yeah.
So as we all know, right, the FCC stopped 4.9 gigahertz for now, right?
Per review,
right? Exactly. And it's a 50 megahertz slice of basically N79 spectrum, right? N79 is the band that they'd be using. And it's basically like operates just like a C-band.
Moose, first of all, can we all agree that one company needs to get the whole 50 megahertz?
Well, that's the topic of discussion is that.
But like, we don't want to see it going in 10 megahertz subblocks and all that stuff. One 50 megahertz chunk and that's it. I don't want to see it getting split up in CBRS. You know what I'm saying?
Go ahead, Sneed. Lay the question then.
So what I'm saying here is the way I'm looking at it, FirstNet doesn't have a capacity layer. FirstNet has a coverage layer, right? Band 14. I'm thinking the possibility of maybe a capacity layer for AT&T and FirstNet through this band, because it's 50 megahertz. It would be one hell of a capacity boost, especially if it gets full powered. Give it the C-band treatment, give it the full power treatment. None of that CBRS business. Don't split it up. No 10 megahertz subblocks. That's what I'm thinking as a possibility. However, I know who's going to oppose this. Both T-Mobile and Verizon are going to fight this. They're not just going to let this happen. Right? But I mean, look, Moose, don't you think FirstNet deserves a capacity layer?
I have
They
mixed
already have one.
opinions.
Don't they already have one?
No, they have a coverage layer.
Band 14 seems to have been serving them pretty well from a capacity standpoint. I mean, the
10
network's pretty robust.
10 megahertz paired, man.
I mean, we've talked ad nauseam about how robust their network has been. I mean, everybody said their network has been so modern. I mean, this is what you guys have said, not me. I mean, go back and look. You released the content yourself, man. I didn't release the content. You released the content, Sneed. You said it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I misunderstood, but you have talked ad nauseum about the network being very modernized, and you've mentioned their Band 14 holdings as well.
I
So
think
if it's not that, then what else is it?
no, it's that. I mean, go ahead, Ian.
Let me ask this. So is this going to have the same is this band going to have the same, like, it's primarily for first responders but can also be accessed by commercial users? Is that the same? Is it getting that same designation?
Should we assume that it's treated the same way Band 14 is?
Well, that's what I want to know. Is
right.
that the case? Because if
No.
it is, then I think there's an argument to allow other carriers to bid on it. If not,
Yeah.
who cares?
So I have the one stipulation I keep thinking about is the politics that have been going on publicly, where you have both Verizon and T-Mobile basically petitioning to have access to FirstNet access for their first responders, specifically T-Mobile, right? Very specifically T-Mobile. They have been fighting to get Band 14 access for their first responders. I think that might be tied up in this. I'm speculating and thinking aloud. It makes it messy. I don't think AT&T would like it, but I think it could happen. You know, these guys have been pretty loud lately, especially T-Mobile.
There's an argument to be had, though. AT&T put in all the work. Why should
Right,
T-Mobile just get
right.
access to it for free? I mean,
Bro, do you remember that? though?
I agree with that. That's definitely true.
But do you remember that? Do you remember when T-Mobile literally came out and said our first responders should have access to FirstNet?
I remember. That's
Okay.
typical T-Mobile. It's how they do. You guys know how I feel about that company. I mean,
Moose,
I'm sorry. I have a hard time respecting those guys. But
Moose,
it's me.
chime in, man.
I mean, we have to go back to 2016, 2017. You know, there was an RFP. There was a bid. Everybody could have bid for the FirstNet contract, right? But AT&T was awarded it, and they have a 25-year contract. There's been a lot of investment by the government on not only
Core investment, spectrum investment.
Yep, spectrum investment. I mean, there's going to be continuous investment.
Somebody grease ponds there.
Well, I mean, they have to have increased. You know,
nah.
you know, they have
Somebody in the government straight up was like, "Yo, we're gonna throw you a bone, AT&T, because we know without this FirstNet, your network is gonna be trash." That's what happened. Network gonna be trash.
I don't know about I don't know about all the details like that, but what I'm saying is the facts are these, right? The government has spent a significant amount of money, right? Already. It seems to me like they're going to continue spending a significant amount of money. So if that all holds true, right? There's no way that FirstNet, the spectrum, is going to be interoperable with any other provider, because the quality experience required for that, it's just not going to. How do I say this? The quality is going to be muddied if another operator does not have the same policies and expectations that the FirstNet Authority has placed on what AT&T has been doing for many years now. Right?
Well, the only other operator that would have the same standards would be Frontline. Right?
All right.
So I think the problem I have with FirstNet as an entity, right? Because FirstNet's a government organization.
Mm-hmm.
They have basically like amalgamized with AT&T. Everything FirstNet branded has an AT&T logo right next to it. But it's supposed to be a public-private partnership. They're supposed to be separate entities that exist within each, like they exist, alongside each other.
Coexist,
But
right?
yeah, but it's become this like the branding behind FirstNet has basically been like put under the AT&T umbrella. But it's supposed to be separate. It's supposed to be for public agencies, right? What should happen is that the 4.9 gigahertz band should reinvigorate that conversation of FirstNet is a government-sponsored organization that is partnered with the telco industry. That doesn't mean exclusivity with AT&T.
But that's per the RFP. It is exclusivity to AT&T for 25 years.
Well, that's my problem with the whole thing in general. Is that exclusivity was written into that contract? It shouldn't have been. And the
shout out to. Let me address the super chat real quick. S Blue Tech, thank you, man. T-Mobile would be the company to want access to someone else's FirstNet network and then run ads bragging about how they have the best first responders network. Thanks, S Blue Tech. And MS brings up a good point. You guys might remember this, depending on when you started watching content on my channel. It's hard to respect companies who do not fully deploy available spectrum that the government gives them, and the other large company has a pedigree of throttling firefighters during a wildfire. That is true. That happened.
Those are fair points.
That is those.
Yeah. You can't argue with either of those, really.
No.
I mean, the 4. I mean, the way that FirstNet agreement was set up,
and the other company fear-mongered its way through China.
Yep. Yeah. There you go. And basically strong-armed the DOJ. Yeah.
And shit on Dish and killed the fourth provider.
Set them up for failure, dude. All three companies are terrible in their own ways. It's just which one's less terrible.
Maybe.
But back to what I was saying. Like the FirstNet agreement kind of just like it like implies that AT&T is going to get access to all this shit because they're AT&T.
Like, because they're FirstNet.
Yeah, because they become.
I mean, they're AT&T, but it's their thing. It's that's their contract. I mean, if you have a problem with it, you have a problem with AT&T having the contract. You don't have a problem with the spectrum going to them. You have a problem with them having the contract because that's where the spectrum goes, to the contract.
It's just it's all messy now, especially now.
But you tell me this, EM. Who the hell wants to admit they're wrong and tell AT&T you don't deserve the contract? You can't backtrack and go back in time.
Yeah, that's true.
You're not going to Thanos snap your fingers and poof, we got to. This is what it is.
I mean, wasn't FirstNet prior to this contract with AT&T done on a local or state level? It was done by.
Yeah, but didn't they want it nationally and centralized?
Yeah,
that was the whole concept, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Moose, chime in if you could add to this some color.
They the government took away their own 20 megahertz, right, 10 by 10 of at the time it was still government owned. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was military spectrum that in the 700 band, and the idea was that there needs to be an emergency. How do I say this? A band specifically for first responders in emergency situations. They would have access to it exclusively, right? That was the whole premise of the, because it started in 9/11 where there was nobody's cell phone worked, right? So they were like, okay, that can't happen again, right? And then not until 2015, 2016, when the RFPs and all this thing was getting started, was the inception of FirstNet, essentially.
I'm just trying to figure out what this is going to be used for in the first place. Because according to this article, there's only been a 2%, only 2% of eligible public safety entities pursued any means of using the 4.9 gigahertz to begin with. So it's not like it's actually being pursued by these organizations anyways.
If it ends up getting treated like band 14, then that means it gets commercial usage, and then it gets preemption and priority.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's going to have a developed core at that point. Right. There's a next level core upgrade coming to FirstNet.
I don't know. It makes sense why AT&T went so soft on C-band and DoD because they probably knew this was coming.
That's the so I was having that conspiracy conversation with Sneed because I was like, whoa.
Well, I ran the
this
numbers. Remember, Moose?
Yeah.
AT&T saved $11 billion on estimate by splitting
Right.
up C-band and DoD.
Now, if this happens, Sneed, what happens then?
This is an entire capacity layer.
50. Nationwide, it would be
I'll tell you who's going to be mad as hell.
Verizon.
They'll be mad as hell, bro.
Still won't have a better network, but I mean, you know, it is what it is.
I mean, why wouldn't they be mad? They got royally screwed on C-band.
I think T-Mobile would be pissed too because they just want everything. It's like, wait a minute, we haven't had a merger in 2 years. Give us something. Come on.
So you know what? Let me pose this. I would be okay with this spectrum going to AT&T if we take the mess that is CBRS.
Ooh.
Restructuring
3 gigahertz.
Restructure CBRS. Yeah. Yep.
Actually, you probably need to restructure the entire 3 gigahertz.
Yep. I agree.
Right.
Because we're already talking about
get it right.
Yeah. Because we're talking about what potentially opening up 3.1 to 3.45. That's right. That's a conversation.
Do you know what you could do if you restructure 3 gigahertz?
It gives you a whole gigahertz of bandwidth.
You go all the way past 4 gigahertz, right? Because that's where you get into the C-band territory. The altimeters running filters, you can decrease the guard band down to 20 or 40 megahertz. You can have another auction of C-band. There's 280 megahertz of guard. Yeah. It's another auction, bro. 220 megahertz of guard. You can clear another auction and you just cleaned up the entire band.
See, but the issue that I have with the 3 gigahertz band is that, like, for example, in the border regions, we've seen a significant amount of interference from Mexico.
With satellite?
Satellite, yeah.
But I was told those are resolved.
It has been resolved. But initially...
How did they resolve it, Moose? Was it filters?
No, not filters. They'd have to basically work with those companies and...
Power?
Straight up turn off sectors. That's my guess.
What?
So a couple things
That's not a solution, man.
The immediate fix was turn down the amount of megahertz, right? Temporarily. Then the second thing that they did was they negotiated essentially with Televisa, right? You guys know Televisa. They're like the biggest media thing over there in Mexico. And then Intelsat. I think that's the second one, right? Those were the two issues. Basically what happened is that they retuned the satellites in the Mexico side so it didn't interfere with the C-band in the US side. And then that took like 2 to 3 weeks. And then once that happened, then they put them back to full power in terms of, megahertz.
So how about what if they pushed, so there's DoD communications that operate in the lower 3 gigahertz, right? That's the whole thing with 3.45 having the power limitations.
I guess it's military too.
So let's take whatever comm systems they're using in that frequency band, give them the 50 megahertz of this 4.9, and that frees up the whatever you have in the lower 3 gigahertz. I mean, that to me is like the way that the FCC needs to go with this, because the DoD has so much spectrum, and they have first right to it all.
Yeah. So I'll share this again because this is what AT&T is campaigning for. We covered this. Exclusive licensing, right? Getting away from all that military stuff. Interference free, right? They're living the DoD life. Flexible use rights, full power, good propagation, large contiguous channel swaths, internationally harmonized, right? Mexico. See? They've lived this life, man.
At the end of the day, it's just a failure of the FCC, though, right? This is a problem with regulation, the regulators.
Yes.
And it hurts every company, including the ones that probably
look,
don't need the more spectrum.
Look at what
Whose
it took
fault?
in order
Whose
for
fault?
T-Mobile.
Whose fault was the whole FAA debacle at the end of the day?
The FAA, the
FCC, the FCC.
I think at the end of the day that the FCC should have told all these airlines, pound sound. I love that term, Sneed. Love the term. You know, like kick rocks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you guys had decades to upgrade your.
They were there. They were at the table in
They were at the
2015,
table.
16, 17. They were there.
They were at the table. At the end of the day, this should not have been an issue.
Look at N41, Moose. Spectrum Auction 108. They lapsed authority. There's Congress messing it up. Our leaders don't lead.
This shouldn't have been an issue, and C-band should have been deployed 2 years earlier.
Who's supposed to hold leaders accountable?
The people.
They're they're not informed.
Whose fault is that?
The people.
All right. So as we want to hold government accountable, let's also make sure we're also speaking about the entity that's supposed to hold the government accountable. Supposed to be us, we the people. We don't do our jobs.
I don't know if you can see that.
Let's just make sure we talk about that too.
2005 is when they talked about increasing the accuracy of radio altimeters for aircraft. That's when this article is from. It's from 2005. So we're talking a decade and a half they had to get their shit together. And then when the conversation started happening between the FCC and the satellite companies and the carriers about, opening up that band, everyone who was occupying it is just gone with the wind, dude. Our government needs some help.
They need milk.
We need Sneed as the chair of the FCC.
Bro, you don't understand. I'm a problem. Like, there's going to be fights when I'm involved. Like, I need action. When shit doesn't happen, bro, it gets physical. Like, I don't know how to describe it. I don't care how shit gets done. It just needs to get done. I can't work at the FCC. There would literally be confrontation every day. Anybody who's not productive or is not working towards solutions, anybody standing in the way of progress is getting blown up by Sneed. Like, it's going to be bad. I don't work at places like that. It's not going to work.
Sneed the dictator.
It's not about being a dictator. It's about action.
I feel you.
And if someone's standing in the way of progress, bro, I want your ass out.
I'm sorry, man. I was just making a joke. I'm sorry.
It's tough, man. It's hard to sit there and live that. Sometimes I ask myself, am I better off just working alone, like a solitary job? Like, come on, man. You've seen it.
We discussed this.
Yeah,
you know my stance on this. We've discussed this. Don't respond. You know what I'm thinking.
I do.
But it's fine. It's okay. It's cool.
I love being held accountable, bro. That's where I get to flourish.
Yeah.
Merit. I don't know what the hell's going on at the FCC. Look, I mean, they got what's her name? She's trying to do a good job. She got her power stripped. What the hell, man? Brandon Carr seems to want to do a pretty good job. I follow him on Twitter, man, and
I love his tweets.
I actually like him, man. I think he's good. I like him a lot.
He's got edge, bro. I like that dude, man.
Yeah, and he's smart. He actually makes a lot of good points.
He's very smart. Yeah,
makes a lot of really good points.
Did you see that open letter that he posted on there? Love
That's
that.
the one you sent me. That's the one that you sent me, right? Yeah, that one was good.
Like, he's not afraid to make it known that he's got opinions. Those are the kind of people we need in those types of positions.
Yeah.
Like,
bro, we were missing an FCC member for like 2.5 years. We had 4 for 2.5 years.
The American people let this stuff happen. We don't do anything about it. So, I mean, we get what we get because we take what they give, which is not very much. So,
So, B, you trying to see me at the FCC, bro?
Sneed, absolutely. Why
you,
not?
there's going to be problems if I'm Moose. What would it be like at the FCC if I was there? Shit would be going down, son.
Don't punch
You'd
anybody.
even though you're the pinnacle of federal power in terms of telecommunications, you're going to realize that there's a bunch of red tape and that you're like mind blown that there's this much red tape, this much lobbying, right, from the US Telecom, aka the consortium of all the carriers, right, in the United States. You're going to see a lot of the negative side of telecom,
Well, there's
right?
nothing wrong with lobbying. I don't see anything wrong with lobbying.
I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with lobbying. I mean, at the end of the day, if these companies are paying taxes and things of that nature, they're being responsible for doing or providing for the American people in some way, shape, or form. They do business with the government. They should be able to lobby to the government. Why not? It's not like they're getting a vote. They're just lobbying to the government on a particular interest, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I think the issue that I have is the financial compensation that goes along with lobbying. It's fine if you want to inform officials about, different aspects of an issue and let them make a educated decision, but when you put a dollar sign behind it, obviously they're going to go wherever the money is. That's the fundamental problem with corporate America in government.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's truth to that, and I understand, and I certainly agree. But if the American people can donate to campaigns and things of that nature, then it's essentially very similar actions that are taking place. You donate to a campaign for someone that you support. This particular company does the same thing, and oftentimes companies at the size of AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, they're doing business with both parties. They give to both because I guess they see the advantages of having a decent relationship with both. You never know which way the American people are going to sway, if they're going to actually going to vote in an election or not. So it behooves you to make sure that you at least have an amicable relationship with whoever's going to be in power. I mean, I think that makes sense because again, you can't rely on the American people to do their job and actually vote. So
the scale of that influence and that money, though, is much different when you're talking about a corporation that has hundreds of millions of dollars versus Joe Schmo who works at the union job that throws a couple $100 to his favorite candidate because he has extra spending money. Those are two different things.
I don't disagree, and you're right. But if Bernie Sanders taught us anything, it was the power of the collective of the American people being able to give to the same degrees as corporations. And also, the deciding factor is supposed to be the vote. But since the American people collectively, on a consistent basis, don't vote, you give that power to the corporations because you don't vote. So if the American people did that and also contributed to candidates financially on a consistent basis, did both, that automatically takes power away from many of the corporations. But again, the American people allow a lot of the stuff that happens to this country. They just allow it. They sit right back, collectively, everybody, all of us, sit right back, and we do nothing. At least not on a consistent basis. So whose fault is it? Whose fault is it?
I'm once again asking you for your financial support. Bernie with the mittens. Best thing ever.
Yeah, man. That was a great meme.
All right. We got anything else, or are we wrapping it up? It's getting kind of late.
Let's do it, man. Let's wrap up. Big shout out to everybody who provided super chats tonight, helping support the channel, keeping content going strong here. We did a members live chat tonight, open to the public for everybody to view. Shout out to Dennis, who was here earlier. Shout out to Moose for coming by. B Chicken, EM Chicken, Moose Chicken, Sneed Chicken. We're all here. Everybody gets more chicken on the SMT podcast. And thank you to my patrons and longtime supporters here on the channel and the YouTube members. You guys make it possible here. Thank you, guys. We will see you all on the next podcast. Definitely one on Sunday. You never know. Something could happen in the industry, and we got to do one midweek. So stay tuned. More content coming. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.
Bye.